There we go.
Pumpkin.
I
If
pressed
you
go
want
live.
to, for
Is it working?
You pressed go live. Okay, one second.
I am currently screaming
future
nothing.
communication, if New Frontier wanted to discuss with the ARF about anything, you go ahead and add me, and we
We
use
got
that
it.
as a
Honest, it's
communication
streaming.
channel.
It's streaming. You're good.
Okay.
I'll change. Send me what you send me what you want the title to be. I'll change. Send me.
But like my day is super jam packed today. I have that podcast, and I'm also IRL meeting up with someone from New Frontier today as well. So
That's okay.
day's jam packed today. My Saturday is just lost. And later today at 7, I have a pop on and drink stream on Politically Provoked that I always go on. So just fucking I'm having a very productive Saturday.
I understand. Do we have Cammy here?
Kami is here. Kami can I know.
Yeah.
I can trust Kami can represent New Frontier. I'm just.
But if you want to do your introduction, you're here.
Yeah, we're live, so we can start whenever, Seamus.
Yeah. All right, Anis, give us the countdown then.
We are live anyway. Yes, we are
live. Excellent. All right. Well, welcome all. The hosting of a quote-unquote modern Milan fascism. We'll be joined here by Pumpkin Frontier.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Pumpkin. I'm a chairman of New Frontier. That's newfrontierusa.org. We are a group inside of the United States that create a lot of content. We have 2 podcasts that run. We produce books. We produce articles, but we also want to run people politically in the United States in 2024. We are a third positionist or fascist group inside the United States that want to change the culture of the nation of the United States, and also, move more towards a corporate state of America, whatever that will be, because America is a republic. But nonetheless, we would like to change America for the better.
Okay, Tommy.
Say again, you cut out.
Sorry about that. We're also joined by Evan Tobia, American Reformation Front.
Hello, everyone. Evan Tobia, chairman of the American Reformation Front. Obviously, as stated above, we represent a form of fascism that we call Reformationism, a combination of philosophical idealism, American populism, and taking inspiration from the fascistic ideas from a multitude of different sources. Much like New Frontier USA, we are dedicated to the total alteration of America towards a more reformationist state. However, unlike New Frontier USA, we focus a lot more on action on the ground, not related to elections. While they are currently on the work, we focus a lot on spreading the message through stickers and flyers, as well as assistance through food drives, community effort and work, public cleanup, and so forth. We hope to one day run candidates, though that is something that may very well be either in the near future or far off, depending upon growth.
Thank you, Evan. Also, we're here joined by Kyle, American Fascist.
Yeah, so I'll just do a quick brief introduction. I'm a writer for the website. I'm the leader of the AUF, like nationalist, all that good stuff. My pursuit of a Catholic corporate America is my mission in life. But yeah, there's not a whole lot else to say.
Thank you, Kyle. Then, of course, we have the American Alaskan National People's Party being represented by.
Yeah, so I'm just holding the spot for the leader right now, but mainly the Alaskan National People's Party's goal is to not be like New Frontier or American Union Fascist or even the Front, is to just focus on Alaska, focus on making it into a quote unquote black shirt state, and by doing that, at least influence the way of other states thinking by having corporatism implemented into the state legislature.
Thank you. Our streamer here is Anis, assistant of the Shims. I myself, writer and host. Thank you. Before we begin the discussion, I would like to announce that our modern Milan comes hence American for the American Fascist gathered on the idea in America. The 101 years.
Seamus, buddy,
Marinetti,
you gotta fix your mic.
yeah, I know.
Yeah, you're breaking up very badly.
Hold on. Hold on. No.
I sure do love technical difficulties.
Oh, they're great. Hear me
Full of
good?
them. Speak again.
Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello, hello.
I can hear you
Sounds
saying
good.
hello.
You there? Still?
All right, here we go. That better?
Yes.
Testing, testing. Everyone hear me now?
Test. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah? All right. So, yes. The goal here at this modern Milan, America, understanding, definition, if you will, and manifesto of fascism in the modern age. Much like Marinetti in 1919, the Fascist Day at the Palazzo in Milan, this goal, this group here, aims to achieve the same thing. So, if we want to begin, we can start with the first issue of Modern America, just to submit them. Hello?
I heard submit the first issue of Modern America.
And you cut out right at the end there, Seamus.
Yeah, that is what we're trying to do right here. Submit the first issue of Modern America. Try to get a core.
Stepping away from neoliberal democracy.
There we go. Starting with the System of America.
Well, Bumpkin, since you placed it forward.
No problem. So we need to step away from, like I said, the neoliberal representation of democracy in America. By doing this, we need to support stuff like unions, for instance. On the counteract, we do need to support systems like meritocracy, and we need, and yeah, basically, how we implement that. We can talk about how we would implement that. The best way to do that is to sort of build a more state capitalist, more corporate state.
All right.
To tag on as well to that, not only is it necessary to step away from it because that system has failed us, but also as well because if we are seeking any actual change, not simply tacking on another amendment or tacking on another policy alteration. If we seek to actually change things from the ground up to reform the nation, root and stem, it needs to step away from what it was originally founded upon to accept that the experiment that we've been undertaking for nearly 300 years has in some ways failed, and to address those failures.
Yes. Are we going to address some of those failures here now, or are we going to just...
I think to cover some of the reasons why. Cover some of the reasons why you aim to veer away from democratic construction, as it has been, is the...
Sure. So I would say that the majority of us, I would hope all of us, do take a America First stance, right? Not in the sense of like Nick Fuentes types, but a true America First stance. Like, for instance, if you're truly, truly a nationalist, right? Truly you love your nation and your people, you would be for some form of universal health care, right? On the same stride, though, you would also be for the nationalization of the pharmaceutical industry to get all of these industries out of your nation that when the only goal is profit, for instance, that can only be detrimental to your nation and the collective. Do we all agree?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's also,
by doing-
it's,
I would
also
agree.
it's also recognizing the fact that the pursuit of profit does make a nation wealthy, but it completely ignores the moral and ethical obligations, as you were stating, Bumpkin, to the collective and to the nation as a
Exactly.
whole. You cannot just pursue profit, because inevitably in pursuit of that profit, you will put everything else aside.
Exactly. There we have a
The first
for in-
consensus we've arrived to.
yes, for instance, a lot of the diseases that plague the American society, pharmaceutical companies have no real incentive to actually find cures for these diseases, because profit is the only goal. Take cancer, for instance. What's more profitable, chemotherapy or a one-time cure? Of course, it's chemotherapy, 110-fold. And there's only a chance that you'll actually live through the chemotherapy itself, but they'll milk you for money until you actually die or somehow get cured. But at the end of the day, they, like I said, profit's the only goal. They don't really care about your actual life.
Even further speaking, not just in terms of services that can be rendered in case of emergency, but you also look at the immense amount of markup due to profit, not just the maintaining of storefronts, but simply the acquisition of profit when it comes to basic necessities, food, clothing, even the acquisition of shelter, and then you can see similar markups and similar profit-based incentive when it comes to utilities in terms of electricity, water, and things necessary to actually be a part of modern society.
Exactly.
The main problem is that our government has privatized so much shit over the course of the last 50 years. And what that's led to is an incredible drop in the quality of medical care in the United States. And also, I would just like to add that these pharmaceutical companies prey on poorer regions of the country. Look at the opioid epidemic. I mean, it's pretty clear that our nation's medical should not be in their it should not be in their hands. Should be it should be handled by the government, because the private companies have literally proven that they can't do it.
Or at the very least, it should be, if not total nationalization, then a direct overview and moderation of the healthcare industry to ensure that predatory practices aren't being created.
Exactly. I would even impose not a fully nationalized healthcare system, right? I would say that nationalized healthcare until it gets to cosmetics. Then when you start to delve into cosmetics, and we can argue whatever cosmetics are, but once it starts to get into the sphere of cosmetics, that's when you go to private healthcare systems.
Yeah, elective surgeries.
Right. Selective surgeries, right? Let's say you want a facelift, right? The state or the collective shouldn't have to pay for your facelift, right? You should have to go to a private healthcare facility for that.
Why don't you just have it nationalized and then have the profits from cosmetic surgeries and keep it nationalized? You just make
Because the purpose of the nationalization would be to provide for the common good of the citizens of America, the capacity to not be crippled when it comes to a lack of care available.
The point isn't to make money, obviously.
The point isn't to make money.
But the idea that a private interest is going to do better, will do more with the money than the state. I don't know. I feel like we could just.
I feel like the cosmetics could be what you could consider a fusionist of the two, where you unite both a common scheme where there's a private option and a public option within the cosmetics. Those are inherently non-medical treatments and rather cosmetic. I feel like the private and
You broke up at the end there,
we do have a
Seamus.
consensus. Sorry,
Is
what?
my audio any better now?
A little better, yeah.
Out for your conclusion.
Apologies if I'm cutting out. I don't know what's going on with my mic today.
Yeah, I think
But-
I got everything.
But nonetheless, we all agree on the first point, correct?
Seems
Yeah,
like there was a
I think it would
consensus
be.
by
Just
the
to
people present.
reiterate in a concise manner, what is the first point?
What I have jotted down here is that the first and foremost issue with the American nation is the liberal democratic prevalence of greed and capital over the pursuit of equitable means of care for the population.
That is solid. That is very
Very
solid.
much sums up the problem. I mean, it's like it would be incredibly irresponsible for us to take any other stance, and just from my perspective, especially having people who, like I was related to, that suffered as a result of the incompetence of the private medical industry, which doesn't actually want to help people; it just wants to make money, and it puts money over lives.
I should also say, speaking on a larger scale, not just in terms of healthcare and the profit space there within, but also if you look at the national push towards, let's say ecological policy. I might have actually messed up that word there, but what I'm talking about more specifically in the idea of clean energy, where because it fell in line with the changing of the population's culture and the pursuit of clean energy and whatever benefits it may have, it ignored because in some ways that would produce a level of profit over what was currently being had. It completely cut out an entire sector of American industry, which was the coal production, specifically talking about the Appalachian region. And you now have nearly the entirety of the state of West Virginia, but plenty of regions of other states down the Appalachian mountain chain that are just these entire sectors of society that are basically cut off, made insular, not because of a chosen belief, but not because of a chosen lifestyle or an insular culture, but because they have been left behind in the pursuit of profit elsewhere in the nation. Rather than looking after the ethical treatment of our people, we've simply focused on what will maintain political power and economic power for the nation.
The biggest problem is that if we try to replace fossil fuels, which I think would be a good start, definitely. But the problem with that is that if we try to do that, what has happened will happen. I'm from Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky was one of the prime coal regions, just like West Virginia was.
Yep.
And when when all that new shit came through and coal mining was being struck down as an industry, it left a lot of people out of jobs. And we would have to find a way. That would be the biggest obstacle, is to replace all those jobs that are being lost, because you can't just switch from fossil energy to clean energy without there being a loss.
That's why it's a slow.
It has to be a stage by stage alteration.
Yeah, it would have to be.
As well, what you're also looking at, and I'm assuming you have a similar situation, because I'm from West Virginia and you said you're from Eastern Kentucky, is that you have it's not just individuals who have moved out there to work. We're talking about generations that have worked in the same industry. It's all their family is known to support themselves. And so you're not just stripping away a job. It's not like losing an office job in the city. You're stripping away a type of livelihood, a culture in and of itself, just because of generational occupation.
And people can't live. Like the thing is that, like, as much as I would like to get our country off of coal and oil, it'll probably be one of the last things that happens, because
I would argue against one of the last things for sure. But then again, New Frontier represents nuclear. So
nuclear definitely should be the way that it should go. I do agree. I think that is something that we all do agree on, that nuclear is the path future for an energy independent America.
Yeah, and I mean, like, the thing is, like, Chernobyl type shit, Chernobyl, Fukushima type shit, like, that doesn't, like, it's not gonna happen here, because, well, I mean, it might, but the thing is like, one, we're not the Soviet Union, you know. We have proper regulations. We have nuclear power plants now, and they don't melt down. So you know, the thing is that like, as long as we take the proper regulations to make sure that we don't have a Chernobyl situation, then yeah, nuclear energy would be the most optimal way to go.
Should also be noted as well as advancements in what we actually use in the reactors. I'm unsure about the actual spread of it, but look at thorium reactors. They can be completely shut down without risk of meltdown or explosion through the introduction of, I believe it's a kind of a chemical fluid almost. I'm unsure the specifics, is why I'm kind of being more general about it. But it's kept in reserve, and then you release it into the reactor, and it neutralizes the general function of the reactor, and it completely removes the possibility, at least for those reactors based on thorium, to Chernobyl.
Let's put it this way. Our technology had advanced so much with nuclear energy that you can literally stand next to a nuclear reactor, of course, with proper glass and all of that. But you can stand next to a nuclear reactor without a fucking hazmat suit on, without any effect, because of how safe the so long as that glass is there, right? But you get the point,
right? No, and that was an agreement. It was that.
Yeah.
And what's even more important is that with proper funding and proper, spread, those safety precautions, the research that could go into it could be increased 1,000-fold in regard to safety and sustainability and the capacity, even for the development of nuclear energy towards more theoretical forms of energy from that basis.
I will say the only obstacle that we would face with this, and I do want to just clarify. I'm not trying to sound like a learn to code, I'm not trying to sound like that crowd, right? But the reality is that we're going to have to instruct millions of people who only know how to operate a coal mine, how to operate a nuclear reactor.
Well, the conception.
Coal mines. I don't understand that. Just because we're shifting power doesn't mean that we have to get rid of coal mines. We can still.
Well,
eventually, I would like to see. Eventually, I would like to see our dependence on coal totally removed. That it will happen eventually.
Just because
you can train. You can train these same families to work in these new facilities. It's not.
Coal can also be exported or held in reserve.
Coal isn't just used for power. It's also used for dyes and many other products.
No, coal is a vastly useful product. I'm not on my personal end. I'm unsure about Kyle or Bumpkin here. I'm not talking about the total removal of coal mining in the coal industry. I'm more talking about if we're looking for pure energy dependence, and we're not looking towards, pure energy independence, and we're not looking towards, this rapid, almost kind of Soviet-style 5-year plan industrialization towards green energy, rather than a slow progression. Nuclear is the best way to go. Because what you can do is, while the current generations, or perhaps even the children of the current generation of those who have worked in that culture of that mining culture, and that's what they have known for generations, they perhaps might not be the ones who can be trained otherwise, but their children and their children's children can be brought out of that very insular working environment towards other occupations. But it also depends heavily upon integrating those regions of America which work on these very occupational cultures, these generational occupations. It's connecting them to the rest of society to bring that to kind of not eradicate, but merge that subculture into the wider American.
So, do we all agree? Do we all agree that nuclear energy, be it slow, but is a must go? It's a okay. So you got that down, Seamus?
Yeah. So what I have is that independence, has to come about in a very staged way, with the opening of nuclear power, the directionalization of nuclear power, while the slow removal of dependence upon coal and oil as main lines of energy.
That's the part that I don't understand. Why are we removing coal and oil? Oil specifically, hydro.
Not entirely from there. No, not just from.
We can still use these resources. There's no point in shutting them down.
Which is
Yeah,
why
no.
we're not arguing for a complete shutdown of those.
Yeah, no, they're
those
just going
things.
for the
We're talking about in
removal.
regards to energy dependence.
Yeah,
Of course.
And
they're trying to move away from the need.
I've heard the same argument said, where they are talking about removing these industries completely. Even though
I don't think
not
did anyone
all-
here make that argument though.
No, but it's
I did.
Okay.
And I will fully say,
hand.
I will fully say that the
Is it commonly overlooked?
it doesn't need to have.
Um,
It won't be a total removal in the sense that it's not going to go all at once. It'll be a very slow and drawn out process where it's phased out. But
Can I make
just
a
for me personally, as I look at the environmental factors of coal and oil, and as I look at
See,
it just needs to be out eventually.
One second, honest. Kami was trying to say something. Go ahead,
yeah.
Kami.
So to facilitate this, I'm proposing effectively that we nationalize and modernize the entire power grid so we can provide power to all Americans. But also, a lot of people don't know this. Our entire power grid is not modern at all, and most of it's from the 30s.
Oh no, it needs a drastic update.
So that would
Absolutely.
be a massive
America is still
public
working on
work.
dial-up internet. Third world countries have better internet speeds than America.
Yes, that is.
Wait, the majority of Americans are still on dial-up internet?
Yes, unfortunately.
You weren't
No
aware
way
of
that-
that?
Hold on, I'm gonna Google this. There's no way that's true.
Most of us aren't even on the internet, so
Yeah.
It's because it's so vast. Like America's.
America is a very large nation. It's hard for them to get to every nook and
Yes,
cranny.
yes.
Yeah, there does need to be.
so nationalizing
Next-
all public utility like
I feel like the
power
next point that should
and
be brought up that
water.
Is
kind of
infrastructure.
segue through here.
That
Yes,
actually was going to
infrastructure.
be my next point here. Was what is the conceptualization on the future of infrastructure?
No problem. I have 6 minutes before I have to go, but let me just hammer this out real fast. Drastic
I've got
infrastructure.
some statistics here. So
Okay.
so we're gonna go like ethnic group.
Bumpkin's about to have to go, Kyle. So let's go ahead and let
Yeah,
him.
so let
Oh
Bumpkin
yeah,
hammer.
let Bumpkin go.
Okay.
My bad. Go ahead.
Last point. Drastic job building up the infrastructure of America. We need to drastically fix the roads, bridges, and buildings in America because our infrastructure is absolutely shit. Also, we need to make public transportation, right? We need to make public transportation far more accessible to all of the population of America. On top of that, we need alternative forms of public transportation via trolleys, via fucking rail systems. You catch my drift. By
Trolley,
doing
rails,
this,
tram.
Yeah.
trams, all of that,
That's a good option.
even research and development into niche. So have you guys heard of what are the trains? Kami, help me out here. It's on New Frontier. It's the magnetic trains.
Yeah, the ones they use in
Mag
Japan.
rails?
Yeah,
Mag
mag
rails.
rails. Yes,
That's what I meant.
R&D into mag rails for sure. But to further this point, these infrastructure programs, right, and building up the infrastructure of America creates endless jobs.
Or at the
Jobs.
very least, endless in the terms of a generational span.
Yes.
Inevitably, the work would end, but it'd be much past our children's lifetime.
Exactly.
The entire span of America.
Exactly. And not only that, with these infrastructure jobs, right? The majority of them would be state jobs, which you could give to the homeless in America. You give them a direct shovel-ready job building up the infrastructure of America.
Yeah, and it's like the thing is, it doesn't require a college. It doesn't even require you to really graduate high school in theory, because the thing is, it's like, oh, you know how to pour a cement mixer? All right.
You can be taught that in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah, if you don't know how to do that, dude, it's easy. We take you out to the site of wherever we're laying the road. Have one guy show you how to do it. I mean, people in general are not stupid. They would be able to figure out something like that incredibly easy, and it would open up a vast amount of jobs, like Bumpkin said. or I think it was Bumpkin that said it. It was one of you. Anyway,
It was me.
It was Bumpkin.
yeah. So I agree 100%. I think that infrastructure jobs would be a great way to combat not only combat joblessness but combat loss from other things we do, like the what we talked about earlier with the switch to nuclear energy. You know, the thing is, America has a lot of work to do in terms of modernizing our infrastructure. Mag rails, I 100% agree. I think that those would be awesome. It would be great if you could catch a train. It would be great if you could catch a train in Maine and ride mag rails all the way to California.
Well, the thing as well that does need to happen, perhaps, well, electrical infrastructure and digital infrastructure and all that stuff needs to be prioritized very heavily. What does need to be worked on even further is interconnectivity, not just between major cities, but also between the more minor townships that dot the landscape. I know, now I'm not sure about how well this is in more developed states, but I know in West Virginia and even in some places in South Carolina, you have places that, if they were properly connected, could have booms of population, people able to support larger families and able to support healthier, more enjoyable lifestyles. But because of a lack of interconnectivity, like Bunker was saying, with public transport or any form of transport, really, and a lack of properly developed roads and our highway system being as old as, what, 60s, 40s, 50s maybe, it's interconnectivity, be it through, just the extension of highway systems, the development of public transport, whatever has it. That, I think, needs to be one of the highest priorities, because the development of that better road system, of a more interconnected society, just through the capacity to get from one place to another in a reasonable amount of time, would facilitate the rest of those public work projects.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I do have to go very soon. I apologize. Kami can definitely represent our points very easy. So Seamus, you got infrastructure, and I'm going to leave on bringing us into the next point, which is building. So we want a strong population, right? And there has already been a law, right? There is already, or plans for a law that New Frontier, New Frontier does come from a JFK speech, all right? We want to directly implement, right, this law that JFK wanted to implement into the United States. What he did with what he did with kids' PE regulations. We all familiar with this?
A brief reintroduction could be useful.
Okay, so they weren't really strict, but there were definitely mandatory workout regimens for high school kids, right? Because JFK could see the obesity levels in America, right? That were slowly on the rise, and the way to stop this was introducing kids into workout regimens in high school from a relatively early-ish age. Not too early to where it would harm their body, but mid high school, right?
I think what I just want to bump in real quick and say that we actually, at least here, it was required for us to take PE to graduate. Like we could.
Yes. But the actual PE that you take to graduate is not at the same levels, right? It's watered down. It's been watered down over time, right?
I mean, hell, there's plenty of. I'm not sure if you're talking about high school level or anything else, but talking just on what I know, high school level down here in South Carolina, that's where I'm at now. You could literally sit on the ground on your phone for 30 minutes every day for an entire school year. That was your PE. And there, like you said, there's no regimentation to it. There's no, this is what you have to do to pass the class. It's just, here's a free hour. It was a secondary courtyard.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of pathetic because, so I gotta share this real quick. So our school's PE, the school that I graduated from, and the school district as a whole, what they did with PE was they were essentially like, oh, you can either take it during the school year, which is what I did, and we basically sat there for 2 hours and did nothing, and then
I
or
have to take my leave now. Sorry, but Kami, take it over.
Thank you for being here, Bumpkin.
okay, thank you for joining us, man.
Let's do this again sometime. All right.
Absolutely.
But
just before we go on, I want Kami to do his introduction if he has no.
Oh yeah, let Kami introduce himself.
Hello, everybody. I'm Kamiyami. I'm the other New Frontier guy from Utah. Uh, I suppose that's it since Bumpkin already introduced us. So.
Yeah, that's good enough. All right, Kyle, you can continue.
Yeah, so that was the option for during the year. What else you could do is you can pay the school $300 and you take 2 weeks of PE in the summer. And I had friends that did that, and basically what it turned out is that you essentially do the same thing you did in school year PE. It's just that this was a way for the school to make a quick $300 per student. And wow, look, it's required to graduate. Isn't that convenient? So, every summer the school gets a couple $1,000s. But, well, I guess it would be more closer to upwards of 10 to 15,000. But still, it doesn't really seem like there's a lot of emphasis on the health of young people. It's just either a way for the school to make a quick buck, or it's just 2 hours of free period. I do agree that we need better physical education regimentation in our public schools. I think that would be a great thing for us to focus on. But we also need to reform education as a whole anyway, so I think that needs to be
That is a great segue to the next point I was going to raise, which is the education system under American Fascism.
I think now I'm unaware of how everybody else is, how New Frontier or American Union Fascists, how they have put forth their conception of education. But at the very least, the Reformationist platform. Actually, if you'll give me just one moment to pull it up more succinctly. Dun, 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 dun.
Seamus, I may have to depart here soon.
Okay, here we go. So, the conception that I would have more clearly is first, I do want to specifically state that there is a major issue when it comes to higher education in America today, where you have a system which is specifically designed, while it does educate you, it also bleeds the American people of money, setting millions of people into debt and providing nothing more than profit, essentially, for many educational institutes around the world. I mean, around the nation. What needs to occur, more than perhaps anything else, is you need to cut out the chaff of higher education. If you are there, just as an example, to learn how to weld, there should be no requirement for a student to go through psychology and ethics and astronomy as, electives and stuff like that to obtain a degree to go work in a weld shop. Well, I understand we would like for our students to be educated. We would like for our students to have a general level of knowledge. K through 12, if it's done properly, provides everything that is truly necessary to be a functional, educated member of society. If people desire to go after these things, I see no reason to deny them, but they should not become mandatory. There needs to be a reduction of the educational chaff when it comes to higher education. If a person goes in to be a welder, they should learn how to weld and be done. If a person goes in to learn how to, for let's say, applicable political science, they should learn how to apply political science and be done. There shouldn't be this excessive amount of unnecessary information which only serves to extend the length of time it takes for somebody to get into the workforce, as well as drastically increase the amount of money that students and their families are being forced to pay simply to simply to have that higher level of education that so many places around America today require for you to actually work there.
Makes sense.
Like,
Tommy?
effectively, in New Frontier, we have a merit-based what is it called? Entry into colleges. So you'll only get into college if you have the requisite scores and whatnot. And once you're in there, then it's basically completely state funded. That because it's a more restricted pool. It's not like uh, literally everyone must go to college and pay out of pocket. Instead, it's a much smaller, uh, more what's the word I'm looking for? Meritocratic thing, and there's no reason to put them in debt if we're training them to be like the scientists and whatnot. So there's
So,
that.
if
And
if I may comment, that system, what should occur if somebody who didn't make the marks as a younger individual desires to let's say go into a field that requires higher education? Would they
I
have to
mean, it's
re-
essentially what we have now. I mean, you just go back like if you
and read
you get that. If you want to go back to
and
college,
repeat
you
it?
go
Okay.
do that.
Well, I mean, there I have heard
Or
arguments
you
from
could that.
meritocracy
I've
where
heard.
it's simply you've failed in the past, therefore why should we put you through it again? I've heard
Yeah, that's
I've
not
heard
really
that.
meritocratic. I feel that's more of like you failed, you get out, right? That's not really meritocratic. Merit
Yeah.
comes from growing ability. Nobody is born great at anything, right? Some people
Yeah.
have natural inclinations towards things, but nobody's born great at something. You have to learn how to be great at something, you know. So that kind of concept has to be applied. Nobody in their younger years is perfect at everything, right? They learn. So if you had bad grades, there should be an intermediate, such as like a college replicant, right, where you up those grades in a area so that you can then apply for a higher education.
The thing is now is that like if you so let's say you graduate high school but you don't do as good on your ACT or your SAT or whatever, when you go to college you just take remedial courses. I mean that's basically what's gonna like what would happen, you know? It's like you wanna get your yeah, you didn't make it before but you wanna try again, okay, here just sign up for some remedial courses and we'll go from there. I mean the thing is like education should not be blocked off. In a truly meritocratic system, we would allow everyone to,
Okay.
there's no going down. Heat only rises. You know, you can come up. You can only progress upward. And so when you give people the knowledge that they can only progress upward, I think it would be a lot better on people. They would probably be able to
Well,
go through the system a lot better. I am very tired right now, so I'm not explaining my ideas as clear and concisely as I want to. But I'm going to put an article out on education on the website sometime in the next couple of days because I think that this is a really good conversation that needs to be had.
the main
Kami, I
point
believe you were
was
saying something?
the qualified individuals don't go into any debt whatsoever. It is one of our things. We want to eliminate the college debt, and
College
basically,
debt needs to go.
I think we would need to effectively nationalize or create a completely uniform federal education with
Wasn't uniform federally regulated education tried in Common Core?
yeah,
No,
but
Common Core was different. Common Core was essentially just like they put out a list of things that everybody has to learn before they graduate high school, which was also incredibly vague and resulted in things happening like at my high school where I took algebra 1 my freshman year, then went back and had to take geometry my sophomore year, and then I can move on to algebra onto algebra 2.
Because I remember even talking to my teachers, Common Core was a particularly fantastic mess.
Yeah, I mean it didn't leave a lot of
aren't the
it left a
schools-
lot well it actually did leave a lot up to interpretation, which was the problem. Because the Bush admin essentially said, "All right, teach them this," and then it's like, "Well, when do you want us to teach them this? I don't know. Teach them this." Like when you leave it up to that, it'll just turn out like a shit show. What needs to happen is we need to have the government needs to have a not only a set list of things that we need to learn. It needs to be okay. You're going to learn this in this year, and then we also need, in addition, to have the government be able to be fully ready to provide education from the pre-K level all the way up to PhD. Otherwise, it's going to transition from public to private, and it's going to become a shit show. Modern colleges are.
Aren't most schools effectively private? At least colleges are.
Yeah, most colleges are, at least now.
There are very few American public higher education institutions, which leads a lot of people into going deeper into debt due to the amount they have to pay for these kind of institutions of higher learning.
There's definitely are like there's some community colleges that are run by local governments, but it's very rare.
Yeah.
Like we have one, but that's because I live in a college town. Like regular places just if you want to go to just any place really that isn't a college town, they probably don't have a public community college.
As well as what you've seen a lot of is either the total disappearance or the degradation of a lot of trade-based schools.
Yes.
Where you have, what are very essential jobs, but to get them, and this is really where I was going to when I was talking about the length of certain kinds of education. While there is certain topics, like let's say, I brought it up, political science. Political science, there is benefits to learning about psychology and ethics and philosophy and so on and so forth. But when it comes to, like I was saying, trade jobs, these are very task-oriented. These are very much, this is what you need to know, and that's all you need to know to do the job. Therein lies kind of I suppose you could say the problem, where it comes to, they have tried to merge, at least what I've noticed, is they've tried to merge trade schools into college, and in doing so, they have stopped trades from flourishing, because what requires a similar amount of time investment to start upon a path to being, let's say, a researcher or an educator or a philosopher, things that do require a lot of interconnected learn sets and interconnected skills, is now applied to learning how to weld or do HVAC or plumbing. And this is something that you can realistically learn how to do well enough to be employed in that profession within 6 to 8 months at a maximum. And if you notice a lot, there's I'm not sure if anybody else has seen this, but there's a big advertisement push that I've been noticing a lot over many different platforms, where we're needing 20 million, 21 million different trade-based occupations. Welding, machining, so on and so forth. And we just aren't going to receive this if you have to go into a similar level of debt for those trade occupations that you need for an occupation that can pay immensely more. Because while trade occupations don't pay poorly,
you cut off there.
They'll pay a livable wage.
I think you cut off again.
Gotta love the technical difficulties today. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I agree with the general point he's trying to make. I mean, it like.
I was about to bring that up as well. So
we have yet a consensus here on the ideas of unilateral overhaul of the school system, reawakening of the trades, etc., etc.
Re-emphasis on the trades, and New Frontier also wanted to increase blue-collar jobs by
which, I mean, that'll come into the trades
as well from the media.
Pardon, how are you going to decrease blue-collar jobs?
Kevin dropped down. Hold on.
Mostly by
Okay.
the method is scholarship, but eventually it would be national, like trade schools.
Yeah, so they were just agreeing with your point there, Evan, on the revival of trade schools and the recreation and total overhaul of the trade system in general.
Yeah.
I mean, and
I do realize I was rambling a bit, so I do want to kind of wrap a tight bow on this. And
on to the point that I wanted to get to next, which is taxation and the American view going forward on the conceptualization of taxation under the fascist state.
Well, I think what needs to be, because I don't think there's necessarily, now obviously there are some issues, but any issues that can be brought up, I believe more has to do with the utilization of taxes rather than the existence of the current tax structure as it is. Could revisions be done to it? Yes, absolutely. I'm not denying that. But I'm also going to just be honest here and state that as an individual, I don't know enough about the tax system within America to claim how it should be changed. But I do know about the actual application of taxes. I mean, if you want to look at it, look at the amount of pay that governors and mayors and senators make, and compare it to the pay of the people they're supposed to be representing. If I was to state that if there's any alteration in taxes, it should be how the taxes that are already received should be used, rather than an alteration to the fact that taxes are indeed a thing.
Tommy?
Well, there's something. I think there might also be some issue with how they're collected, because very wealthy and massive corporations are able to avoid paying taxes, doing offshore accounts and things of that nature. In addition, the middle class are hit extremely hard with the progressive income tax. Now, we do support a progressive income tax, but we want it to mainly target the more wealthy. But what happens here is you can earn too much overtime, for example, which happened to me in one of my old jobs. And it put me in a higher tax bracket, so I actually made less, but I worked more hours. And that's kind of ridiculous, because I wasn't making that much to begin with.
The progressive tax bracket should take into consideration whether or not that,
what level of work you're
the amount of pay,
Exactly.
not only the amount of work you're doing, but also whether that pay is earned through, just your regular hourly wage or salary-based wage, or it's earned through additional work beyond what you are being paid baseline for.
So,
how much money do you guys think Jeff Bezos has made since this conversation started?
probably
Right?
in the hundreds of thousands.
Probably quite a bit.
How much do you think in the last? How long have we been talking? I think maybe like 30 minutes or so.
50 minutes.
How much do you think he actually worked? He probably didn't. He's probably taking a nap right now.
And that's the reality of the dichotomy between working classes here. Fascism isn't about any singular class, but that doesn't mean we're unfair towards the lower classes that right now are taking the brunt of issues.
Yeah, obviously there is
somebody who doesn't work, right, like Jeff Bezos, and only collects the labor from the people who work under them. He shouldn't be entitled to all of that money, right? He may have built it, sure, he maybe took initial risks, but now at this point, he lives a life where he's completely disconnected from any reality. He doesn't have to work.
Dude,
Go ahead, Kyle. Go ahead.
I was talking about this the other day. Sorry I interrupted, but this is really important. Man went to space, freaking space, and he didn't even look out the window. Like, talk about not even like understanding your place in the world and place in the universe. Like, dude doesn't even care. Let's
be entirely fair. I'm sure there's plenty of issues many of us could take with many different very rich figures, but let's not turn this into a situation of character assassination. We are here for the establishment.
Let's not.
We're not here to assassinate the characters of any.
But I do think you bring up a good point when you bring up Bezos in the fact that the purpose of fascism when it comes to classes, as Seamus was saying, is that it is, or as a specific BUF parody of the Communist International song goes, it's a classless revolution. In that it's not, it's not the rich revolting, it's not the poor revolting, it is everybody. It is a mutual revolution. As well, fascism focuses a lot on class collaboration. But what needs to be seen is you can't just say to the workers, okay, we'll be nicer to your bosses. And you can't just say to the bosses, okay, we'll be more fair to your workers. There needs to be mutual ground that is found. And for that mutual ground to be found, there does need to be alterations kind of on every level of society. Much like how New Frontier says, in the implementation of policy, and how Reformationism says in the actual, reform from root to stem, in that there are individuals like Jeff Bezos whose acquisition of wealth is not obtained through, while they have put work towards what they've done. It's not the nature of that work is so dissimilar that trying to connect between Jeff Bezos and somebody working at a shipping plant is so much of a stretch that I've known plenty of people to claim that it's flat out impossible, that the only way he'll relate to the common people is when he's in the ground. The goal of fascism is not some utopic idea that, we'll all get along. It's taking as many steps as we can towards collaboration for the national good. Now, how we achieve that when it comes to individuals like Jeff Bezos and those who rely mostly upon the revenue that the companies they built up make, I can't quite say. But there does need to be some form of either alteration in taxation or pull a Huey Long and go with distributism. Who knows? But something does need to be done.
There needs to be more.
The tax system will be redone. I mean, I agree, definitely.
Yes.
It needs to be eventually overhauled, is what I'm hearing. It's better.
That'll need to be figured out.
While a specific system might not be something that we have within our conception as of now, we do know that it does need overhauled. That it needs to be an alteration.
All right. The next point then, wages, which is more of a social aspect. Let's get on it, right?
Everyone that is capable of working should be entitled to work as many hours as, I think it's like, I'd say a 40-hour work week is pretty standard. It's standard to what we have now. It works pretty well, but we just got to increase the fucking minimum wage because people can't live off $7 anymore.
No, you can't increase the minimum wage. If you increase the minimum wage, all that's going to do is rise everything else. You'll have the same exact, the relative same amount of hours to pay for the same amount of stuff as you do under the current minimum wage, but all you'll do is raise the prices. What needs to be done is not a raising of wages, but a lowering of costs. Restrict how far things can be marked up for profit. Ensure that people are not being forced to pay ridiculous prices for necessities. Now, luxuries, sure, mark them up however you want. Luxuries aren't necessary, but necessities, that needs to be lowered. Water, and by necessities, I don't just mean what you need to live, but what you need to actually be a productive member of society. Water, electricity, housing, clothing, and the capacity to pay for transportation. A clear example of this is the most clear example of excessive markups I can think of is Beats headphones. But as I said, that's a luxury. So instead, let's look up at another thing where it comes to cars. For example, in the modern era, with our complete lack of public transportation, or at the very least, a complete lack of public transportation in anything less than a major city, it should not be nearly a death knell to both the savings and spendable currency of an individual to work on maintenance of a car or to even replace certain parts. Now, I am obviously talking without the assistance of insurance, but insurance in and of itself is a situation where you're bleeding money just in case an accident happens, rather than having a lack of markups to such a degree that even if such an incident occurs, so long as somebody is smart with their money, which I do think should be part of education, that is financial education in regards to personal finances, you would still be capable of doing that without bankrupting yourself or harming yourself financially to such a degree that you basically have to stifle all other plans simply to rebuild that safety net.
Okay, yeah, I can see. I can see what you're getting at. I mean, the thing is with minimum wage, that was kind of just an idea I was throwing out. But I do think that the holding putting a limit on how much profit you can make on things, that would probably work a lot better.
But it's not an amount of profit. It's stopping people from so for example, I brought up markups. It's not about stopping people from getting too much profit from one item. It's about stopping people from charging an excessive amount for a product. For example, let's say
Talking about price fixing.
Yeah, price raising, where like retail purchases, clothes, for example, for like $5 to $10. They add on. I'm not sure how much of a percentage it would be. I'm not a mathematician. They add on an additional $30, most of which is a good portion of which is going into profit, rather than charging a more reasonable amount. Where yes, they're making less per piece, but it's also making it more available to the public as a whole. And obviously there are issues with this, and I'm no economist, so I know I'm not exactly getting the whole picture here. But excessive markups, lowering that, and I'm talking about for everything, not just for necessities, not just for food, but for everything, really, would help drastically reduce prices, which would allow for a more livable situation under minimum wage.
Yeah, I get what you're getting. And I agree. Yeah, I definitely think that.
So Cammy, do you have anything to add here, Cammy, before we make conclusions?
So, sorry, Seamus, what were you saying?
I was asking if you had anything to add.
Okay, so I think to help facilitate this. Now, this isn't on New Frontiers thing yet. It's more my personal opinion. It's basically building the corporate state through a system of national unions, because the corporate system is effectively unions. That's how you can explain it to Americans more easily. That help determine the living wages and where to put resources and things. I'm sure everyone here knows how the corporate state works. Am I correct? Okay, good. So building that and having representation through the unions, we don't necessarily shit. Sorry. I lost my train of thought.
You were talking about how livable wages could be provided through representation in the corporations.
In the corporations, we don't necessarily need to set a minimum wage effectively. It's
Seamus, you're very soft. You're very hard to hear.
But combine that with price fixing, and then bigger companies like Amazon, for example, could be totally socialized or broken up into smaller companies.
I think as well. Oh, go ahead, Kami.
Oh, in addition to the corporate tax being actually enforced and raised. So, okay,
I think as well. Another thing that I think going into kind of segueing into another topic, Seamus, if you want to go ahead and do a general overview about.
So, can you guys hear me now? Well, yeah, all good.
Yes.
Okay. So basically, what we've come to. Sorry about that. What we've come to so far is that instead of enforcing some kind of minimum wage, we take the approach of both lowering the average prices of things that are usually marked up by these companies, and by giving workers representations within the business to allow them to negotiate better wages for their industry.
or at the very least providing
And
the
backed up
workers
by
an
the
avenue
government, the
that
union.
can be negotiated. Because I think if you go too far in the method of providing workers with the capacity to say, oh, well, we're just not going to do it, then you run into the workers can completely shut down, let's say, a necessary aspect of gosh,
That
dang it,
that's
I
why
cannot
they're
English.
sorry. That's why they're national unions.
Yeah, this is
That's
why the this is why
Right.
the
regular union.
But I do think there does need to be some form of written program, even if it's simply there is a program to be developed in the future of stopping national unions from simply becoming a occupation killing thing. I mean, look at the now obviously there is different factors involved, automation and out of nation production.
It's
But look at
basically just a
look at the
rename
unions
of
in.
the corporate
Go ahead, Kami.
system. It's essentially just a renaming of the corporate system in Italy that existed.
Oh, of course. But I'm more talking about there does need to be some form of system in place that stops the unions from strangling business as it is.
That's the state. They're federal.
Well, but the problem is you can say oh, well, because it's a federal union, it won't happen. But if all you're doing is making the unions on a national scale, then all you're doing is exceptionally kind of overcharging the unions. If there's no system in place to stop that from becoming simply the workers say, the workers say, they all band together and say, hey, this is how it's going to happen no matter what, then all you're doing is taking the more syndicalist approach
look at it like this. I mean, the thing is, if we do end up doing things similar to the phalangists in Spain or what Mosley wanted, then the reality of the situation might be is that we might have elected union representatives directly negotiating their wages in Washington. And how would we handle that situation? What would that situation look like? I mean, we don't really have the foresight to determine that, I don't think.
Of course, but I also think that if you're, for example, what I'm talking about is there would need to be some form of mediator between the workers and the workers in management of a specific occupation.
In the ideal of the corporate state, that mediator, the representative of the consumer, and the mediator would be the state.
Okay.
Yes.
Actually,
Yeah,
and that's what I was meaning. More specifically
local
outlining what the purpose of the state in that relationship would be. That's what I was speaking of. It was actually, giving it a description
between employer, employee, and so on, and between the different groups.
Yeah.
Oh boy, I can't wait until we talk about social issues.
Oh yeah.
That's gonna be fun.
So Seamus, go ahead, and if you want to go ahead and give us an overview.
So what I've heard so far is that in the case of wages, the idea is that the worker should not get a higher minimum wage because the minimum wage will drive prices up as well, but instead should drive national union to negotiate with the employer at the mediation of the state to receive a wage that is considered fair within the industry that they work.
As well as a focus on the focus should be of making average cost conductive.
But yes, driving down absurd markups and such in order that the consumer is fairly represented in the work in the purchasing power as well.
Yep.
You know what we could probably do? Reckon that the easiest way for us to do it would just be to implement it into the system we already have. So here's how I'm picturing it. Say union wants to negotiate whatever, boss is being like, so union goes to a judge, then the judge is like, all right, let me hear boss's side, let me hear your side, and you guys will sit here and I'll mediate, you guys discuss until you come to a middle ground.
A
That
labor
would be
court.
the easiest way for us to do it.
Yeah, that is effectively how the corporate state handled it in the past.
Well,
with,
Kami, you were saying something?
Labor court is what you're describing.
Pardon?
I think he said a labor court.
Yes,
Yes.
that's exactly what was described. I was about to say
Mm-hmm.
that a labor court that is set up by the government in side of that would
You're breaking up very badly again, Seamus.
you gotta love the mic.
Apologies for technical
Is
difficulties.
that better? Here we go. Back.
Amos, are you still on Syrian Wi-Fi?
No. I don't know what's up. I think it's just the internal mic that's fucked here.
Yeah.
But what basically the labor court is a way of which the worker and the employer can mediate discrepancies and issues that the state acts as a protector. And these courts are set up by the government in order to ensure fair judicial process in the means of the employment sector.
I do
Right, that's
believe
Wade.
that does relatively wrap up that section.
Yeah, that's 7 points so far.
So, I do want to bring up, if you don't mind, Seamus, unless you already have something keyed up.
No, go ahead.
So we've talked about, why we should separate from the neoliberal democracy that we've experienced for the past near tricentennial. We've spoken about the education system. We've spoken about energy. We've spoken about the living wages and the economics of not only survival but the economics of a fulfilling life. So why not now go into a topic that's a bit closer to almost opinionated, but let's talk about what the purpose of the state in regards to, as we were speaking about, a mediating actor during these labor courts. Why not talk about the state's purpose as a mediator of cultural norm and societal norm, how the state interacts with everybody
Oh, here we go.
on a natural scale, on a one-to-one basis.
Something about Gentile.
All right, so let's get this shit out the way. No fucking rainbows.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I actually do have to step away for a second. I will be back.
No, Kyle, we don't go in that direction. Instead, we approach the philosophical meanings. Gentile said, for fascism, the state and the individual are one. The state and individual are terms that become inseparable in a necessary synthesis. What Evan here is trying to get at is how each citizen will be able to conceptualize the state on a more individual level, rather than on what the state's opinion on the citizen. Kami, I believe, would be probably the best American look to for this kind of discussion on the individual's representation and harmony in the state.
Well, effectively, each citizen needs to feel a connection with one another. And the purpose in the unions is not, say, that the state wants to extract maximal profit like it is now, or just give everything to the worker. It's well, that is part of it. It's to raise up the standard of living and harmonize relations between the classes. So that attacks the root of class warfare, I think, is how they put it back in the day.
Yeah.
Education, that would be like to teach the citizen their duties to the state.
I think the best way to Americanize this is to recognize Jefferson's call to the citizen
that their freedom is directly related to the collective American spirit, and so a patriotism.
Jefferson relates this in his description of every citizen's duty to the state, right? Says that there's every citizen has their individual duty to the state above all in order to continue its existence. And that's a very American point. That's what Jefferson curated with his Jeffersonians, right? With his coalitions he tried to make time as president. those who fall with him. So there is an American correlation to the idea of a duty of state, and I believe Urza Pound relates this in his book Jefferson and/or Mussolini.
Yes.
He tried to bring about the recognition that every citizen has an intent duty to the state. Evan, if you're back, you can continue on your point.
Oh no, I was actually more interested in hearing what Kyle and Kami had to say about it. Mostly because while I understand the necessity of this, I am interested in hearing New Frontier's position and the AUF's position.
I mean, the reality is that the state, no matter what we do, is not going to be able to tell people, how to think and how to feel behind closed doors. But as long as it's not determined to be harmful or not
harmful to the state.
Of a corporate state, I really don't think that we will have much to. I don't think we'll have a lot to worry about, really.
I think, because one thing I did want to bring up in talking about this, I know I said I wanted to hear what their position was, but just when Kyle spoke, or did you have something to say, Kami?
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, it's perfectly fine. What's up?
New Frontier's perspective was we wanted a very strong state because right now it's extremely it's strong in the sense that it can press you, but not strong.
Apologies, Kami. I'm not sure if it's just me, but you're breaking up rather.
You cut out a little bit there.
Sorry, my internet is acting up.
I think one thing that I want to lay out first and foremost is that I do not believe the state should be secular. I think that in the spirit of our predecessors 100 years ago, where we should make no mistake that our movement and as a result the state operating will be a Christian.
I'm sorry, you're cutting out on my end at least. Hello?
Oh, great. We're all having technical difficulties. Okay.
It should not be secular, is what I said. Not. It would, ideally, there would be no separation.
A little conflict because New Frontier thinks it should be secular because we have way
of course, there's going to be personal opinions that differentiate. Right?
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, like I just want to hear your argument for
that there was way too many religions and especially fractions within Christianity. Christianity alone has like 1,000 different variations within the United States. Getting anyone to agree on a single state religion or even a wide sort of like the Christian state would be extremely difficult.
Well, I think there's
if I may, Kyle.
Go ahead.
One thing I do think is important to recognize is that from its foundation, the nation that became America, the original 13 colonies and all that stuff, was founded upon Christian moral and social teachings. That was the very foundation for the law. That was the very foundation for societal cohesion. And while there has been an introduction of other religions, from Islam to Buddhism to even small sects of Hinduism throughout, that core basis, that core foundation of American social cohesion has not changed. And while I'm not necessarily stating, the church should be a part of the state, if that is what Kyle is stating, I am not necessarily in agreement with that. What there should be is a recognition of the truth of the matter, that America, from its foundation and what keeps, what the foundation of Americans' moral law and social law is in essence Christian. And while there is certainly separations in denomination and separations in theology of Christian denominations, the core concepts of Christianity, if they do deviate, unless it is for very radical sects, SECTS. That differentiating is minor, at least when it comes to the actual conception of, well, here are the basic social foundations, here are the basic moral foundations, and we can all kind of agree on that, but our theological differences are what causes Christianity to split.
And what I'm going to say, and just a caveat real quick. Okay, I don't know what that was. Anyway,
Somebody added a rhythm.
just a caveat real quick. I'm not suggesting a theocracy or anything remotely close to it. What I am Okay.
Funny moment.
Anyway, what I am suggesting is that, like you said, a recognition that that is where our basic societal and legal framework comes from, and I would also say that just because the state is officially a religion, that does not mean that anyone of a religious minority, even Muslims, even Jews, they would still have full right to worship and practice however they please. I'm not suggesting in any way that they
Much like modern America today, you have, so long as your rites and rituals don't require you to, slaughter human beings, or cause similar physical or mental trauma towards individuals, there should be no issue with freedom of worship, so long as that common acceptance of this nation falls under this specific set of moral and social values, which come from this specific religion, because that is ultimately where it draws from.
Yeah, I agree. You see, yeah, I think we're.
But I do want to say, if you and I are in agreement, Kyle, I do want to hear what Kami has to say in response to all this.
Yeah, I do as well.
Let's let Kami put his point in.
By emphasizing one sex, or what is it called?
Denomination?
Branch. This denomination, say Christian, would cause unnecessary divisions among the entire populace, from secular to Buddhist to Muslim, etc. They would all feel like the state doesn't properly represent them anymore.
Well, I can definitely see that. I see that. I see that as somewhat of a reality. In nations like where fascism drew, or religious lines like Spain, Austria, the religious majority almost completes a total number. I think it was 99.2% of Austria, like 80-something% of Spain. They were both highly Catholic, right? So there was a reason why they had such close relations with the Catholic Church. For other nations, which were more diverse in their approach to religion, it's harder to enforce any one state religion. I believe,
Hey,
first and foremost,
Shane,
sorry, what?
Bumpkin wants to come back in.
Oh yeah, sure. We can have him back on. Where is he joined in? Yep.
I'll invite you.
Bumpkin's back.
Good to see him back.
All right, there we go.
Bumpkin.
Welcome back, Bumpkin. We're on the topic of religion.
Yes.
Oh, awesome! Great thing to come back to.
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
So okay. I don't know what has been talked about. Sorry, I had a third way radio episode I had to do.
That's okay. So basically, I'll get you up to speed. Evan and Kyle here believe that there should be a place for religion within the state, right? There should be a state religion. However, that shouldn't affect people's ability to worship whatever they have, as long as it doesn't bring bodily harm, right, to other people.
I should note, just to kind of elaborate, Seamus, that while I'm fairly certain Kyle and I follow along the same lines, I'm unsure where we come into agreement or disagreement on whether or not, church should be an integral part of the state, or recognition of religion.
Yeah, so there's that disagreement that could possibly arise. And then Cami is taking a more secular approach of saying no state.
I would say no state religion, but we all know the reality of the situation is that Christianity is the main religion in the United States. So I advocate culturally Christians, right? Culturally, Christianity should be the morality of the nation that is the United States. It has always been that. It has always been that. And I don't think we can really change that. So we should promote culturally, right, the morals that come with Christianity. Do we all agree?
So
that makes sense. If you live in a majority Christian nation, it's understandable to use Christian I guess you could say social morality rather than.
And this is actually
Well,
that was
also-
actually the point I was going to be bringing up before.
So, Cammy, just before Evan, you go on your point of morality. What we're talking about, Cammy, is not like morality as in its relation to the state, but rather a social morality, like
Yes.
how one holds himself in social service. I understand what you're about to go into. Like,
And
morality comes from the state. Absolutely, I understand.
What's happening effectively is when the citizens unite and create the state, the churches are already integral to it as long as they support the nation.
exactly. And most churches will. Most churches will, absolutely. Because most churches are fed up with the current state right now anyways.
The other
All right, so let's let Evan get back onto his thing before he loses.
Yeah. I also got to get dressed while I talk to you guys, so continue.
All right. So what I was trying to bring up is that it was not like they were saying, and kind of like how I believe I was hinting at earlier, though I might have been not as clear as I wanted to be, was that if you look at America nowadays, we still fall in line, though this is shifting as culture and, in counterculture clash and the culture war continues to rage. Up until, this culture war really came into full swing, even though there was those separation of, hey, I'm a what do they call themselves? What do followers of Islam call themselves? Muslim. I'm a Muslim.
Yep, Muslims.
I'm a Muslim. I'm a Jew. I'm a Buddhist. I'm a Hindu. I'm a Christian. So on and so forth. There was no real societal breakdown or conflict of religion, even though there was a recognition that the social and moral values that the nation was founded upon and that law was really based upon, where there was instruction or inspiration from religion to be found, that didn't cause any societal cracks or societal breakages. The only place you really found that in was when there was a drastic influx of a foreign population of a specific religion, specifically Irish Catholics into Protestant New York, for example. But
then
when it comes to
traditional tribalism and clash that came with any kind of mass migration.
Exactly. But when you look at actual, after generations passed and the citizens were naturalized, that clash no longer became the central focus anymore. Now it was perhaps one of the greatest strengths of America is to say, a couple generations down the line after an immigration cycle is, hey, we're all American here, even if we believe different things. It's these core values that unite us. And it's always been that conception of core values. The core values which tie this nation together is thicker than blood. That's thicker than water, and it's nearly thicker than faith. And all that I believe Kyle and I are recommending is that there is an official recognition of where that is drawn from, where that social and moral foundation is drawn from.
Yeah. And by the way, I would just like to add, so I said earlier in VC text that since our movement's very beginnings, a century ago, we have been tied directly to the church. The reason I said this is not necessarily out of a theocratic standpoint. I'm not saying that the church wasn't state because, I mean, maybe in Spain, but that's kind of a gray area. But what I was getting at was that when you look at the church's social teachings, they pretty much directly align with ours. We should not kid ourselves in that regard. So what we have to do is that just takes us back. We have a basic recognition that yes, this is where our social norms and our legal code comes from, but it's not a declaration of, oh, you can only be this religion. We will make it very clear that that's not what it is.
Well, I don't see the necessity of that then.
Saturn, I disagree because I mean, look at Falange, Spain. I mean, it was directly a part of how the government operated. There's a very famous Francisco Franco quote: "I am responsible only to God and to history," and that is essentially how our state will operate.
All those new
Franco wasn't a fascist.
No, he wasn't. He was just a weird.
Yeah, you brought up the forbidden F.
the forbidden F. For all those people, before we continue, that are requesting to speak, Q&A will be after the drafting of the manifesto.
Yeah.
Which
I mean,
could
yes,
take
Franco wasn't.
however
Franco
long it
wasn't in the. Franco wasn't in the sense of how Rivera was, but it. Okay, even look at Primo de Rivera. Read Primo de Rivera's writings. He was even more about the church than Franco was. So, if anything, that reinforces my point.
Well, what I'm saying is,
Yeah, but I mean, his connection.
if
I'm
you
just going to speak for
simply
Cami.
recognizing it,
His
then
connection wasn't because the church was like. His connection was more because the mass population of Spain was Catholic, and they recognized Catholicism more than they really recognized the idea of the Spanish nation. So he needed to use the Catholic Church in order to fundamentally.
and
That was
Yeah,
his
you're
vision.
breaking up a lot there, Seamus.
Fuck's
every
sake.
American recognizes an
You've
American
really got to get a
nation.
better mic.
I really do. Is that better?
I rarely hear anyone invoke God outside of, say, Utah or very religious communities.
And I would
In
now
God we
this
trust.
does come into
comes out
personal
like a
experience,
pinky.
but I find that to be the complete opposite. I find plenty of
E
people.
pluribus unum is our motto. Not the man. In God we trust later. Much later.
While
The
that may be
foundation of the country.
while that may be technically true, there's far more people, including Americans, who recognize "In God We Trust" as a particular motto. Even if it's not the
Motto.
specific motto, it's recognized by far more
Wouldn't-
Americans. But also, in speaking what
Wouldn't
you're
that
talking
mean we
about,
already recognize Christianity then? In the way you guys are speaking of?
Yes,
not
but we're yes. America is Christian enough right now. I don't want to force anyone to become Christian. That's not my goal.
That's not what
It's
they're
just
arguing.
Oh,
It's
this
more of
election
an
thing.
official
Oh,
proclamation.
there you go.
yeah, an official proclamation. The proclamation should be, I believe that America, at least culturally, is a Christian nation, so we should keep those morals. But saying that, we shouldn't outcast other religions as long as they
That
stick,
is exactly what I'm talking
Right. All
about.
right. Right
as
there.
long as
We're in
as long
agreement.
as yes,
We're all in
as
agreement.
long as they stick to the same morals, right? As long as they stick to the same morals, or at least
As
very
long as they
similar,
conform to American
as long as they
morality.
conform to the American morality, we're not going to outcast different religions.
And I should note as well, as much as the conception disgusts me personally, if that morality does change over time, then it would be the purpose of a organic and constantly adapting state to then recognize that which has become the basis of social and moral value. If that becomes a more secular worldview, if it becomes a Muslim worldview or a Hindu worldview or anything else, it would be the duty to recognize that as the nation
Duty of the
adapts.
state to recognize its population. Authority is the authority. That's all.
Exactly. And while it is true that there might perhaps be some discontent between the most minor of populations, the purpose of unity is precisely that, unity. And if there will always be minor groups throughout the nation that are discontent and disagree. That's just the nature of mankind. The purpose is as much unity as possible, not perfect unity.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out real quick that as soon as we started discussing religion, the chat started like just bouncing off the walls.
Blowing up? Yeah, because welcome
Yeah.
to
Don't worry, the next one is going to get even hotter. Immigration.
Oh yeah, fuck them.
Immigration
Okay,
is the next one.
I think it should be allowed. I think it should be allowed, but it shouldn't be like, you know, it should be.
If we're gonna talk about
I'm gonna step
actual
outside for a
plans for immigrant, go ahead, Kami. Oh no, he said he had to step out. Okay, if we're gonna talk about actual plans, the ARF stance is this: is immigration as it is now is completely unsustainable. It's not just the amount of immigrants we have coming in, but it is the method by which immigration occurs. There needs to be, for a time, a total cessation of immigration, a total stoppage, until borders, both air, sea, and land, can be secured properly, and a complete rework of the immigration system can be done so that it best serves the American people.
Absolutely, a moratorium. Sorry, I was doing something. A moratorium on immigration completely, and because the bottom line to it, right? The bottom line to it is automation is coming. Okay, there's no way around this. Automation is coming, even in a corporate state.
Andrew Yang was right.
He was on this aspect. He really was. Automation is coming, and to allow in all of these immigrants that work these low-paying jobs, just so their jobs can be replaced with automation, that is not beneficial at all.
Not
So
only is
they
it not
were
beneficial to us, it's not beneficial to them.
exactly.
There's no humanity in that. There's no, to speak in the more modern terms, the common humanity. There's no common humanity in that. That's just
There
taking them
isn't.
away from one life from one life that, however shit it might have been, into another life where they're temporarily employed until they're kicked out again.
Exactly, because as soon as there is no actual benefit for these immigrants to be here in the first place, right? As soon as that is erased, all of these neocon Republicans that are like mud GDP are gonna want to boot them out if there's no benefit for them being here, and that's the bottom line to it. So by us just blatantly saying we need to put a moratorium on immigration until we can actually see the situation at hand, because we're not being told everything, obviously, as American citizens. It's just something that needs to happen.
They want us to talk about the Jews.
We're not. What do you mean?
Okay, so just so we can address this, none of us are anti-Semites and none of us are racist. Okay. Anyway,
that was a question posed to us twice now. Once in vetting, once in DC Tech.
yeah, go ahead and continue. I just wanted to bump in and set that aside.
Pumpkin?
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Well, my
Did
bad.
Kyle cut out for you?
Yes.
Yeah, you cut out. All I was gonna say was just don't
Okay.
anyway.
Just
Yeah, just
continue.
continue.
Okay. His mic's doing something where it gets really quiet. Is that doing it for everyone else too?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It happens for me too. I have them turned up to 200 to get.
Okay. All right.
Was it me? Like, I think I might be able to fix that.
It just goes quiet every once in a while.
It goes. It goes.
Is it any better now, or is it like ear rape, or what?
That's
You're
fine.
It's fine now.
It's fine now. Okay. Oh, they just. Anyways, so yeah, a moratorium on all immigration in the United States until we can assess the situation truly. And then after that, with the coming automation, like, I'm okay with some brain drain from other countries. I'm fine with that, but we have to be very selective. We can't allow all of these immigrants, specifically coming from our southern border, to immigrate in here, taking all the jobs that quote unquote Americans don't want to work, even though they would, but that's not the point. All these low paying jobs,
And
right?
when it comes to Americans not coming to work, I don't mean to interrupt, but that also comes in line with a very poorly interconnected infrastructure, which would allow them to make the travel out there.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Very thing where they just import work and pay them less, and
Right.
then we have the huge social issue of joblessness.
Right. I do hate to do this, but I do have to go at 3:15 my time. So we got like another 20 minutes.
Damn, somebody's cutting fucking floor in the background. Okay.
But no, it needs to be, just to kind of wrap this up, because now we are kind of going into circles. There needs to be a moratorium put on immigration until the borders can be secured and the immigration process can be reworked, such as to serve the American people.
Exactly.
And that's really kind of it.
That's really kind
there
of
is
it.
There is immigration policy 101.
Yep. Do we all agree?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was pretty simple. I mean, most of us have immigration is a big issue, so most of us have already ironed out the details and beliefs on that.
Yeah, I mean, it really is
All we
kind
gotta
of
do is just
either you're
restate it.
antagonistic or you're what are borders, get rid of them. It's either one or the other, really, in America nowadays.
Yeah, but So I guess the last thing, the last major issue that I wanted to bring up before I inevitably have to go here soon, but I do think is an important one that we have to discuss. All right, homosexuality.
That's more of a social issue,
Oh,
and
boy.
actually, I had a discussion with Evan before. This that the issues like homosexuality, transgenderism, etc., are extremely social issues that need to be dealt with in a context only an individual government can. Right?
And while we are all mostly, while we all are, the people who are part of the fascist groups that are trying to establish an American Fascist Manifesto, there something was brought up in VC text that I do think is important, is that we need to focus on actual fascist policies. Now, obviously, there is a social policy to that, but social policy inevitably that does come into the argument of, Christian-based morality or secular-based morality with Christian underlying foundation, or so on and so forth. It's something that, while it is an important topic to America today, it's not important to the manifesto of fascist policies.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so have we discussed culture yet?
We touched on a bit of culture with religion, but if you want to actually make a point out.
Okay. So how does everyone here feel about the thought? I don't know if anyone here has actually looked at the New Frontier platform or not, but who here actually has an idea of, my bad, I just got a notification. Anyways, who here has the idea of nationalizing the Boy Scouts and sort of trying to change the culture of America like that?
Fucking base.
Yes. Yeah. Why not?
That is literally the most base
I like
thing.
the immediate fucking base that came out. I think
Yeah,
it's not
it's
necessarily a
base.
terrible idea, but if
Mhm.
you're going to change the culture, there does need to be a specific goal. In terms
I'm
of
gonna call
where
this
that
point.
should,
Hold on.
like,
When
that
I'm
has to be
I'm
guided
writing in the
towards.
back. I'm going to call this point the national, and you guys can discuss from that point. National youth, what to do with the.
All right. Okay. We can check this more towards the youth. I do think,
Mhm.
not in its current iteration, but the Boy Scouts, or simply, honestly, youth scouts, male wing and
Yeah.
female wing, that should most certainly be something that is either like there's heavy enticement towards it, or basically mandatory.
I would say heavy. I would say voluntary when it starts, of course.
I would say
Yeah.
Lean towards enticement. Absolutely.
Lean
Yeah,
towards enticement.
it should be voluntary. We shouldn't
when
force
people-
it.
Yeah,
But
when
the option
people
should be there.
here, when people think about an authoritarian state, they always have this conception that you're under the boot of the state. But no. A lot of it is incentivization, right? A lot of it is you gain something from doing something, right?
It's
So
like the
for
Muslims
instance,
in Bosnia.
sure. For instance, right? I would say, because in New Frontier we advocate background checks and all of that when purchasing a firearm. Just a background check and a mental check, that's it. But
Mhm.
I would advocate for that if you go through this youth program at a young age, which that's enough, that's enough developmental status as it is, as you go through that state program, that you would not need a background check, or you would not need a mental check at that stage when you want to purchase a gun when you're younger. Because
And there can also be, financial incentives for parents to put their children
exactly
through programs.
tax breaks, or literally anything, right? We're trying to change the culture of America or United States into something that is healthy, right? We want our youth to be healthy, right? We want to lower obesity. We want strong will, right? We want a people, right? Or where, let's say you're a father, right? And you see your kid fall out of a tree, right? Initially you want to run over there and help him and cradle him, and you know what I mean? But in hindsight, what you really should do, right, is you should raise your kid to get back up after falling out of that tree and then climb that tree again, right? It's and it might sound harsh, but in our
We want to
reality it's
instill
not.
within the youth vigor.
Yes, vigor. Yes. Not,
The thing is with the youth, and I'll tell you this as somebody who just graduated high school, so I have a pretty good idea of what it's like to be a young person in this country. It fucking sucks. All right. The thing is that right now there is no social structure there that makes it feel like you're not totally alone and you're not totally going at it by yourself. When you're a young person that you look at all the stuff in your future, how fucking difficult it's going to be to, do things like move out, get buy a certain type of car, not live paycheck to paycheck basically. Versus if there is a strong social net that is created through, like you said, youth scouts, and can also be created through government action to make things a little bit easier in living, maybe America's young people won't be depressed in record numbers.
Well, one thing I do also want to
There's
bring up is
also-
having gone through Boy Scouts myself. Not all the way through, but I went through it for quite some time until a specific series of events that aren't necessary for this conversation. But while within it, that I understand completely because I'm relatively young myself. I just got out of secondary schooling not 3 or 4 years ago. It does provide very much a close network of people you've been with for a long time. It creates in and of itself a family out of the community. And it's not always the case. I have heard of bad situations within the Boy Scouts, and obviously that would need to be addressed. But when it comes to something that would be part and parcel to education, part and parcel to community building from a young age, like Bumpkin was saying, it's about the installation of vigor. It's about the installation of a cultural identity. It's about the installation of a specific ethic towards the approach of life. To accept the struggle, to be unified through that struggle, and to find the strength to overcome the struggle through unity. And that I think would be a major teaching of this new youth organization, or the successor to Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. And it most certainly would be a great entity to combat that sort of odd nihilism that has infected the youth of the nation today.
exactly.
We
And
can also subsidize family, help them buy houses and things like of this nature, and encourage families to stay together through the education system. You know what I mean? The creation of families.
yes. I believe everyone at New Frontier supports the nuclear family.
Yes,
No,
the
not-
nuclear
not-
family is
Yeah.
part. Without the
Extended
establishment of the
family as
nuclear
well.
family,
Why not?
you do not have the establishment of the societal organization that we would seek
Yeah.
to create.
Not that we're
Yeah.
going to completely outcast other family units, because some of these family units are not, they really don't have any say over it, right?
Right.
But we should socially outcast, let's say, fathers that leave their children and their wives behind to go do something else, right?
And
Those
mothers who do the
people-
same.
And mothers that do
Yeah.
the same. Those people should be socially outcasted. That is terrible. You're bringing children into the world into a broken home. That is absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible. But
So
but
actually, this
nonetheless,
does kind of come into
go ahead.
I'm not sure necessarily how well it does, because I'm not trying to segue into a different topic, but what would be, and because I'm in full agreement, there does need to be a level of social consequence to actions where law does not necessarily have a place. But what should we do about, obviously, I'm unsure about New Frontier, but Reformationism tends to promote a more socially conscious interaction, where we would like to de-incentivize and make less the open promiscuity between youth. But what
Yeah.
should be done about those who, through either unintention or lack of knowledge on the subject, create such situations where it's not simply, hey, I put a baby in you and I'm leaving. It's, hey, I barely understand how making a baby works.
Okay, well, here's something I'm going to posit.
Because there is an unfortunate epidemic of that.
I
of
can't
youth
remember. I can't remember which pope it was. It was sometime in the 50s and 60s. Seamus probably knows, but he had predictions about the rise of contraceptives, and almost all of them came true.
I would say
Getting into that.
since we briefly touched on homosexuality, I'm gonna reiterate this point. I'm not against necessarily homosexuals, right? I'm not going to outcast them or put them in camps or anything crazy like that. I would enact public decency laws though that are straight across the board for every citizen. It might sound a little harsh, but you cannot walk around in public in a latex suit with dildos poking out of yourself like a porcupine. I'm sorry, there are children around. I'm sorry, there are children around. You can't do that.
Well,
I completely
No,
agree.
don't be sorry.
Don't forget,
Don't be
children
sorry.
are
And just
okay with
like that, we all got canceled.
I mean,
remember, Bumpkin,
Indeed.
it's okay now. They understand it. They're good with it.
No,
According
children cannot
to-
consent.
According to Vice.
No, children cannot consent.
Bruh.
Sorry.
Well, I'm well
Imagine
aware.
crushing
That was
I know.
satirical in nature.
I know. It's just the
We're
bottom line to
just
it.
doing a little both.
You need some public decency. You need some public decency. Like
Oh, definitely, Buckin.
just like and it's the same with gays and straights. Like I don't want my kid to see two two adults on the side of the street, be it straight or gay, having sex. It's just the bottom line to it. Children shouldn't see that. I'm sorry. They don't need to be exposed to that. It's just the bottom line
No.
to it.
Don't
It's not
be
even
sorry.
a matter. It's not even a matter of innocence. It's a matter of there is more. Not only can that be traumatizing to a young person,
Yeah.
and that's not about breaking their innocence. It's just about because they don't understand the act, but also there is a reason bedrooms have walls and doors. There is a reason why these things are done within secluded positions. There is, I believe, some basic human nature towards not being ashamed of these things, but doing them in private.
Exactly. So I'm gonna shift the goalpost here since we all agree on that. Have we talked about the death penalty?
Oh,
No,
No, we
have
haven't
not.
broached the death penalty.
Keep it.
guys.
Backfiring.
Wait,
Specifically though. I just wanna out
No. We have not broached the subject of the death penalty.
okay. I'm speed running a little bit here. I apologize, boys.
I know because you have to go to another thing.
Yeah, I also have to. I also have to go. So.
Oh, I could
You're
talk for
fine.
ages. I have nothing to do.
Same here. I am literally-
But death penalty specifically. What's up, Kami?
Oh, I was about to say what you were going to say. Go ahead.
Okay. Death penalty specifically for crimes like rape, child molestation, and treason. Those should be the highest crimes, and they should be upheld to the highest category. That should be the death penalty instantly. If it is proven that you committed treason, if it is proven without a doubt that you molested a child, or is it proven without a doubt that you raped a woman, you should be put to death. And
the thing is, I do want to say real quick, a common detraction we're probably going to get, and that I'm going to clear up now, is people say, well, what about innocent people that are convicted? And I would like to say that in the age of DNA testing, it is very easy to concretely prove if someone did or did not do something, especially
within the modern era, there is a very distinct aspect of, accepting the claims of those who purport themselves to be victims. In a system where things are taken without, as best as it's possible, without that emotional inclination, there can be a much better objective investigation, which can help lead to a lack of innocent conviction.
Yes, absolutely. If it is, listen, I believe, right? If you believe someone if they're like in cases of rape and child molestation, if your DNA is inside that child, dude, you're fucking guilty. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't want to go into detail because I don't want to think about it, right?
Wait, guys, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Okay, can we all agree?
Well, also,
Just-
if you fuck an animal.
Yeah, that's it also. But can we all agree? The first person has to go needs to be Vosh.
No,
Vosh
we're
needs
not.
to be.
We're not going to kill
What?
Vosh.
No, do not bring this in. Do
That's
not
why-
bring this into
that's not
personal
gonna be
attacks.
a
Towards
policy.
anyone.
We're not bringing this into personal attacks whatsoever.
Now wait
Yeah,
a
no
damn
personal
minute.
attacks.
If I want to send him to, if I want to send Vosh to,
Stop. We're stopping this right now.
No, stop
No,
right
no,
there. Right there.
Okay, I'm
more.
sorry.
And
Okay, I'm
not
sorry.
further.
what's
Nothing
the big
more.
problem with that?
Sorry.
Shut.
No.
Um,
Because this is not
I'm
the
just
purpose
being
of this
ironic.
discussion.
I hope you guys understand.
I'm now going to use my Mussolini voice. Shut the fuck up. Okay, thank you. God.
It's more just loud.
Okay,
Yeah.
but
on the subject of
mhm.
the judicial system, I really want to bring this away from the social sector because I think it's way too opinionated. But anyway, what is your solution to the incarceration rates in America? I cannot remember a time where it wasn't number one in per 1,000 people incarcerated. America, throughout my entire life, has always been the number one incarcerator on the planet. How are you going to fix this? How are you going to get rid of this apparent crime? That's
Oh, you see,
Wait, repeat. Hold on.
Hold on. One at a time.
Repeat the
This
question
round-
again.
Can I bump
Hold
in?
on. This
Repeat.
interacts into one of the points I wanted to ask about for you guys to put down. Point 11, the justice system.
Well, you see, my friend, there's one group of people that, despite making,
I
No.
really
Kyle.
want to
No,
kill
Kyle.
you. I really want.
As for the
Those
actual
statistics.
as for the actual justice system itself, there is.
Oh, I gotta go.
Oh, you gotta go.
Sorry.
several people are typing.
Ave Bumpkin, Ave.
Yeah, let's get some
Bumpkin,
hail
take
bumpkins
care.
in the chat, please. Thanks. Talk to you boys later.
I'm not gonna say that, but I do hope to
Evan?
take care.
Evan, me and you are gonna talk, okay?
All right, sounds good.
Okay.
Tammy's back in the driver's seat.
Come in.
Okay.
Welcome back to
No,
the driver's
but
seat.
so what we have here with the justice system, I actually did the math for this. So this takes me back kind of to a point I was talking about earlier, but there's a lot of things in this country that are illegal that it's kind of stupid that they are. But so I'm just gonna get into one of the main ones. I've got the numbers somewhere exactly, but a very large amount of people. I'm gonna have to Google this to get the exact numbers. Give me a minute. You guys have this conversation once.
All right.
So I think he's touching on a more uniform law code and a simplified one.
Mm-hmm.
Any opinions on that? Across the states.
Yeah, the hope was that you guys would discuss on a reformation to the current justice system. As Anna said in his preface to that question, there's a lot of false incarceration. There's a lot of
Well, what also does need to occur is that while it's not necessarily a majority population, there is a rather decent percentage of those who are incarcerated who are serving life sentences, where they're simply held in captivity. Ow, motherfucking damn it! Sorry. They're kept in life sentences, kept in imprisonment for years on end, while doing basically nothing. And honestly,
Okay, so
there's
I have.
plenty. If I may, Kyle, just to finish up.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know you have the statistics, but just from a general point of view, there is, you have those people who are in jail with life sentences, so there's no escape for them. So those numbers will maintain itself for quite some time, especially if they were incarcerated at a young age. You also have members, like Kyle was saying, who are incarcerated for either things that we would legalize, like the possession of marijuana, or people who are incarcerated because of ultimately very minor things, which could be solved through the application of communal service as a punishment rather than incarceration.
Yeah. So here's the statistics. So between 2001 and 2010, 8.2 million people were arrested for. I'm having to flip back and forth between tabs here, so I'm sorry if I'm reading it kind of slowly, but they were okay. So 8.2 million people were arrested for marijuana-related charges between 2001 and 2010. Of those 8.2 million, which is, keep in mind the population of the United States is, I think, 300 million. So that's that's like what percentage of the population? I don't even know. But of those, 88% of that number were arrested for possession, and the amount that they were in possession of is actually most of them were under the legal limit now. The legal limit now, at least here, I think, is 8 ounces, which is a lot of marijuana. And that's just marijuana. In the 90s, we had a lot of people were locked up for nonviolent drug offenses, and people got life sentences because of like the fucking 3-strike rule and shit like that. What there's very clearly an unfair standard regarding certain crimes, and I'm sorry, no one should be locked up for life for drug offenses. If someone is addicted to drugs, that's not a crime. That person is a victim. Especially if it's like an opioid. That person is definitely a victim. So
but as well, another thing that does bring up is private jails, which are explicitly, the kind of revolving wheel of prisoners is used as a way of obtaining profit.
Yeah.
And that's also
that is abhorrent.
Now, like, I will admit, I'm far more of a supporter of if a crime is first offended or minor enough that incarceration should not be the answer. It should be community-based service or some form of non-incarceration based punishment, which is used for the benefit of the nation as a whole.
What I would say is my general idea regarding it is that really with all drug offenses, unless it's trafficking, so like selling it basically. If there are any kind of drug offenses that is not related to selling it, that person should not face jail time at all. That I think that there should be the number one punishment or the number one result of that, according to the law, should be that person gets sent to rehab. Because very clearly, if someone is on a drug and it's most likely an addictive drug, it probably shit we're gonna keep illegal, like meth or opioids or heroin, right? Again, victim. Why would we incarcerate them for being addicted to a drug? That is totally morally.
Because there's profit in incarceration.
Yeah, because there's profit.
Just speaking honestly.
The profit.
But that is morally abhorrent.
Hold on, Kyle. I don't mean to interrupt you, but Kami was trying to say something.
We have to take the profit out of it, make them state prisons. But in addition, the ones who were incarcerated just simply for the possession of marijuana, for example, if we legalize it, and if that's their only crime, then they should probably be released immediately with some sort of what we have in New Frontier is offering transitional housing for reformed inmates.
Mm-hmm. There absolutely should be
citizens, no stigma attached to them because they've already.
Well, the only way you stop that stigma is if there is, social and social programs, propaganda, and advertisement-based promotion of, or rather, promotion of it as something that is either a non-negative thing or a positive thing.
Just hold on a second. For all you requesting to speak, we will have a Q&A after which this talk is done. The manifesto, when it's finished drafting, we'll then have a Q&A.
Seamus, why don't we go ahead and give a progress report on that? Because I know you wanted to keep it within so much.
Actually, we're sitting right now. We're on a good progress. We can fit more points in easily. If you guys want to cover more topics, we have 11, technically 13 points.
I think that in general, this should be something that is held over the next. This general.
Yeah, I think this is something that we should reoccur because it's obvious there's a lot to talk about.
Of course, it's just
Yeah,
a person.
it's as I said earlier in the YouTube chat, we have an entire civilization's worth of issues to discuss, and this is probably going to take more than a couple hours. And I also actually really have to go because I'm gonna go do some stuff with some friends. But this has been very, and I definitely think this should happen again sometime soon.
Well, if you have to go now, then it might be a good idea to just go ahead and put a to hold off on finishing out the manifesto and go into the Q&A segment.
Of course.
Yeah,
And
you guys go ahead and do Q&A. If anyone has any questions for me personally,
and we lost Kami.
Just DM them to me.
Is it just going to be a Reformationist representative and Shemacite Fascisti representative? Oh, and ANPP.
I think if
I trust that Kami will have faith in what I say.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care to answer any questions that are directed squarely at me. Like I will answer any of them. Just shoot me a DM. But otherwise, I'm gonna head out, guys. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I'm also for the same. If you're not here to message here, I can absolutely answer in DMs.
But this has been a very conducive conversation, and I think that this is definitely going to lead.
Absolutely. I guess we can have our Q&A now. All right, in orderly fashion, those who wish to have questions may come up. Start with Golem. See, he has his hand raised. Golem, on up. Welcome, Golem. Shalom. What brings you up here?
I was actually going to ask, what do you guys, what are you guys going to do with people like the Natstocks and the racialists? What's your solution to them in that?
As you know, we oppose National Socialism and racialism in all its forms. The ARF has put out quite a few posters and stickers about the evils of racialism and whatnot. Our standpoint is that they will not have a place in our government nor our party. They will not have a place
I think should be important as well is that there is room for criticism, for
absolutely
discussion of alternative policy, but that discussion must be maintained within a conductive and productive action.
Exactly.
For example, I had this conversation with a previous individual who I was talking with, and they were like, "Well, what if I just choose to resist?" And I was like, well, there's platforms for you to resist, for you to criticize and to fight back, but there is still, the regular progression of society. And they're like, no. What if I choose to, no matter what, to resist you through violence? And it's until you get to that point, there is room for negotiation, for discussion, for criticism.
Exactly.
But once
the critique of fascism has to be done productively. You can't just go out there and throw bricks at windows and scream that you hate the state. This is not a productive nor constructive way of critiquing it. It is just yelling and screaming. You don't get
at that point. It's just violence.
Exactly. You're out there for violence sake. You're not out there to do anything productive.
And as well, what should be noted is that while there is the liberal worldview that the response of fascism to anything that isn't total obedience is death, that's certainly not the case. If it was the case, no one would ever follow fascism, because then it's just
we can look to our historical examples.
Yeah, fascism was interchangeable with totalitarianism. No one would follow it. Exactly. No one would actually fight for it.
You can look to our historic example of praxis, right? If you look at Mussolini's Italy, you look at Salazar, Perón. These people allowed there to be opposition. You look at Gramsci in Italy. You look at Nicolai Bombisi. Look at what's his face, Poringa.
You can also look at the proposed structure of government that was put out by the British Union of Fascists as well.
Maudsley talks about the willingness of conducting speech with the opposition. So there's absolutely room for opposition. There's absolutely room for that, but there's no room for people who only partake in violence for the sake of violence.
And what should also be noted as well is that criticism is necessary.
Absolutely, every state needs to be able to advance. Every state needs to be able to advance. And criticism.
So you believe that? For instance, it is a fact that neo-National Socialism or other racialist theories have been bouncing back in somewhat popularity. They have not been mainstream accepted, obviously. But do you think that in the fascistic system that will be progressively phased out to non-existence?
Well, of course, the reason why people are attracted to these radical extremes of racialism, like National Socialism and whatnot, are because they feel left out of society. They feel that they're a threat. Yeah?
Yes.
Just for time consumption status, let's go ahead and try and keep this to about 3 questions per person.
Yeah.
So, Golan, this is going to be your last question, so you know. But yeah, the whole point is
that was
that
my
there is that they are attracted to these ideologies because they fear, right? They fear their place in the world. They fear being left out. So they're driven to these extremes, and that's why they act. That's why there's growth in their
Or
small
they have
mass.
already lost all
Alright.
hope, and
Yeah.
the reason they have lost all hope, specifically in the growth of, let's say, white nationalist movements, is the growth of antagonism towards them as a particular group. Whereas within a fascist society, call it reformationist, call it fascist, call it what you will, within that society, because it is based around collaboration for the betterment of the state and thereby the betterment of all, that kind of tribalistic group antagonism is rooted out as best as is possible.
Yes.
Because there is no perfect utopia where we all get along, but what can be done is to take the steps necessary to get as close as is possible to it.
Yes. To
Every
get as close
citizen
as
shares a
materially
relationship with the state so intimate that the state only exists so far as it's made to exist by the citizen, not this citizen or
Mhm.
that citizen, but all citizens. Right?
Yeah.
All right.
And
Thank you
that's
for
all
coming
my
up, Golem.
questions. You can go to someone else.
Next in line, we have Scythian Weed Smoke 131 TB. Come on up, buddy. Hello, man. What's your question?
Right. So I'm just gonna have a little brief introduction to this question, and don't take this as a political statement interpretation, but have it with what you will. Right. The foundations of America could most certainly be correlated with Giovanni Gentile's fascism. If we were to write a modern manifesto for fascism within an American interpretation, which I'm kind of, picking up from what has been said here, I have two questions then. One, how can we cross-compare American founding father values to fascism and therefore benefit it to fascism? And two, how can we redefine the 1900s terms of fascism within a modern lens? Not necessarily disagreeing with them or refuting them, but how can we redefine, those values within today's lens?
Sure. So,
to
firstly, here, Evan, I got
don't mind.
the first part. Oh, he went
You got
down.
the first
Okay,
part?
that's fine.
Okay.
The first part, it's important to recognize that America is not exclusionary from the things that Giovanni Gentile and early fascists like him spoke about. Like I brought up during the conversation, Urza Pound's Jefferson and or Mussolini, and Jefferson's conceptualization of the state and how it was very similar to later conceptualization. It's important that Americans do that, recognize the reality that there's a lot of similarities between founding and the ideas of fascism. It's always about the idea of unity and the idea, I guess you could say, individualism being subverted or not subordinated, black, right? Rather than enforcing any kind of individuality. Jefferson called the individual to put the needs.
You're breaking up very heavily. You're breaking up very heavily, Seamus.
Oh, that's a shame. Better.
Yep, you got
Yes.
Jefferson.
Yeah, so Jefferson called for citizens to recognize their duty to the state and to the collective above their individual needs, right? Jefferson called them. And that's where you can find your correlation between the American founders and later fascist conceptualizations. The second part on how we modernize these things, it's important to recognize that we're not trying to redefine fascism. Fascism will always be fascism. We're trying to bring into that modern teaching of fascism, the actual idealism, the syndicalist economic, all that kind of things. It needs to be brought into the modern world and conceptualized to a modern society. We're not so much redefining as in modernizing. I think Evan.
So one thing I do want to bring up is that is actually the core conception behind why we in the ARF call ourselves Reformationists. It's while it is, we consider it to be an American conception of fascism, combining it with American idealist philosophers and American populist leaders, with their combining its initial ideas with their thoughts. Ultimately, it is there is no true alteration or deviation from fascism as it was, except for, like we were talking about earlier, with those more social aspects, which are based upon the culture that we're trying to bring fascism into. It's not about claiming, that we are not fascists, but it's about reframing fascism for the American lens, much like how the Spanish did with Phalangism, the Brazilians did with integralism, so on and so forth.
They're all at
It's a
their core
deliberate.
fascism. However, they just
Exactly.
are interpretations of the society they live in.
It's the universal framework binding with the cultural influence of whichever nation it's applied to.
Absolutely. All right, next on our list is Muhammad Al. Yeah. All right. Sorry if I pronounced there, buddy.
Still there? I got a question. Regarding
You're really
fascism.
fuzzy there, man.
Yeah,
Like,
I got a question. Can you hear me?
you hear
No,
him?
you're very fuzzy. We can hear you, but it's very hard to understand. I think he's going to be texting it to the thing.
Yeah, I was about to say if he needs to type it out.
That is always an option.
I do not think he heard that though, because he deafened and muted.
No, I think he's deafened here. We'll move on to the next. Oh, he's back. Oh,
I think he's trying to sort it out.
Yeah, sorry, I got it. So
that's better. That's better.
My question is, how are you to establish a sort of like party? If you were to hypothetically establish this in like the United States or something, how would you address like the social issues that are currently occurring?
The social issues that arise have to be dealt with on the ground. Evan, in his movement, deal with the social issues in America as they arise and how they have to be dealt with from a fascist. They apply the methodology in.
You're cutting out again.
You're cutting out very badly, Seamus.
God damn.
You cutting out, dude.
Seamus, I will fund you a new microphone.
You need to get a new microphone, my friend.
I need to get a professional setup. I've been using fucking shitty earbuds and that to do all this work. I'll get professional shit soon. Is this better though? Is this better? Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah. Better.
So basically, what point did I cut it at?
I cannot remember. It was quite near.
You're talking about how the ARF approaches issues as they come up.
Yeah, so they come out as the issues come up. The American fascists will apply thinking of fascism and the methodology of fascism to solve these issues. Right? That's how they'll apply these kind of thinking.
Like a key example of just a particular social issue is if we look at the influence of the LGBTQ movement within America, and I'm not trying to bring this into a conversation about pro-homosexuality or anti-homosexuality, just as a way that it can be applied, is that you look at it through the lens of how does it apply to the unity that fascism seeks to promote? How does it apply to the collective benefit that fascism seeks to promote? How does it apply to class collaboration as fascism seeks to promote? And how does it apply to whatever it is that you see the culture as, which the American Reformation Front sees it as a very Christian-based in both social and moral teachings? How is that viewed through that lens, and how the culture unifies for the most part, as there will always be exceptions, the disparate American peoples.
So is what you're saying, you'd be anti-LGBT, right? Because it's mostly conservative.
Yes. So the American Reformation Front, due to its Christian backing and its belief of the Christian foundation of America, is anti-LGBTQ. But that particular social issue, while it is viewed through the lens of fascism, is based mostly upon the culture that both we see in America and we wish to promote in America.
Exactly. When you apply this to different thinking, such as over here in Europe, you'll see that the Casa Pound and Phalange have no issue with homosexuals whatsoever. In fact, civil marriages and civil partnerships to give them more service. Although they do the institute of marriage itself is something that the church has put out. So if they choose to give civil partnership, what?
Yeah, you're breaking up, dude.
Better.
Yes.
What I was saying is that Casa Pound believe that homosexual in every way, right? Which is part of
breaking up again.
Yeah. Really?
Yep. Seamus, disconnect and reconnect in.
Oh,
yeah.
I think he's fixing
Hold on.
it in his settings.
Yeah, he's gonna have to take a second. But mainly it comes into the social issue. So
There we go. I'm back.
I'm unaware of where you live, Mohammed, but it mainly comes down to the culture that fascism is being applied to. That is how you must address social issues. Like he was saying,
Yeah.
over in Europe, there's plenty of circumstances where homosexuality is accepted, but perhaps, let's say, the institution of marriage is not applied to homosexual unions. But it all depends on the culture you're applying fascism to. Fascism as a universal doctrine is not something that is based in the
Yeah, it doesn't
conception
comment
that
on
it
homosexuality.
has
It
an
just comments
answer
on
to
the social
it doesn't
issues.
have an answer to every single issue. Instead, it's a set of policies, government structure, economics, and the philosophical foundations of the state that is then molded or melded with the culture that framework is applied to. It all depends on what country you're trying to implement fascism into.
Yeah, so specifically in America, then how is it going to like government? How's they going to like implement certain like policies in regards to homosexuality? Civil marriages.
I don't think any government will ever ban homosexuality per se. I just think that they'll become a don't ask, don't tell kind of situation.
Because it's that situation where
you can never actually get rid of homosexuality. It's a natural inclination of some people. Right? It'll always be a small percentile, 1 to 2%.
It's if I may, Seamus, it's that thing where there cannot be total control over the people 100% of the time. But what there can be is direct incentivization, influence, and available programs necessary to help promote what the ruling class, be it, let's say it's not the American Reformation Front that gets in charge, but let's say a group like New Frontier USA, which I believe is more conducted to homosexuality.
Oh yeah, they
it would all depend on which group and which particular culture that they seek to promote would obtain power. But it would mostly be done through a series of incentivizations and de-incentivizations. Not necessarily punishments, but benefits towards the promotion of that which we seek to make the norm within society. I believe a key example to talk about what was brought up, which is LGBTQ, is the American Reformation Front practices, or at the very least we preach what we call compassionate intolerance. We're not talking about, stoning homosexuals in the street. And,
no, fascism will never call for the harm of any individual.
Home. But what we do call for is, if there are individuals who wish to fit in more with a society that sees homosexuality as the natural state of being, then there will be programs available for those to receive therapy and assistance upon a path towards normalcy. And
once again, normalcy as seen through the lens of that.
Normalcy as seen through the lens of the culture we wish to promote.
Exactly. All right, we're gonna have to move on to the next guy. Thank you very much, Mohammed, for coming up and asking.
Thank you.
I cut him off.
I believe there was Timmy Dog has his hand up for a while. He's not the first on like the list of audience, but he's been wanting to talk for a bit.
All right, Timmy, you're invited on up. Come on up. Welcome up, Timmy.
Hey. Hello, what's going on?
Not too much. We're just discussing fascism here.
Oh, okay. Well, I had a question about what's the recommended amount of dedicated WAM I should add to a server? I've been having that problem with my realized it's Party of America, so Canadian.
You need to go and download freeram.com and then it'll set you up. All right. So
okay, thank you. I have one more question though. What is the hardest Angry Bird? It's just not really related to. I get it's not really related to the discussion at hand, but I'm like running a poll for my school. So what is the hottest Angry Bird?
Yellow.
Yellow. I would say yellow. All right. Thank you for coming up, Timmy.
No problem.
See you later. All right, next we have
question about
Stormy
Boy.
I'll invite Cammy back. Cammy's here.
Cammy's coming back. All right.
Yeah,
Cammy
back up. But who do we want to invite up?
Pika was tapping tapping it.
Welcome back.
I apologize for that. My internet.
Oh, good. So we're inviting Pika up. Welcome, Pika.
Okay, so my question, right? I'm newly fascist, but my question is, how do you think we would promote a fascist system in a state or country like America? Because so many of the residents there are like very extremist liberal, most of them are homosexuals, shit like that. So how do you think we would implement it?
So, while I won't speak for any other group but my own, as I cannot speak necessarily as to their programs, what we promote is a growth within local communities through productive basically propaganda, which is, as was being stated by Bumpkin back way when, if you were with us whenever he was talking, the establishment of assistance in food drives, assistance in the cleanup of cities, assistance of
So there's
the
actually a term. I
homeless.
talked about this once in another one of the
If there's a
podcasts.
term for it, then I'd
It's called
be
the
happy to.
fascistization of the people, or constructing the state without the state, where you become an alternative for people on the ground. Casa Pound does this in Italy, right? Where they have food drives, they have the clinics, they have all that stuff that offers an alternative to the state-run private institutions, which usually cannot deliver, right? So
In fact,
instead,
now that I remember, a distinct inspiration. Now, we don't follow every bit of what's in this book, but a distinct inspiration that many members in the ARF get is from Kai Morris's Revolution in the Modern Era. And what Kai Morris talks about in that book very specifically is that if you want to change a nation, you cannot just go into the political system, preach your message, and expect change. Instead, what you must do is become a nation within a nation. He calls it the shadow state. But basically all it is
the state without a state.
Through the acquisition of financial resources, through the acquisition of land and the businesses upon them, through the acquisition of sheriff's offices and everything else like that, you can basically integrate yourself into, as a political entity or as a group, you can integrate yourself into society in such a way that you can ostensibly run it, despite not being in charge of the entire nation as a whole. One thing it talks a lot about is providing, as Seamus was talking about, providing a better alternative. He talks a lot about interest-free banks. He talks a lot about unification through organization, facilitating. Gosh, I keep saying a lot. Facilitating group activity and community interaction that brings the people together, and making clear to these people that it is your organization, your not necessarily your ideology, but your organization, which is promoting these actions, which bring them together, which bring them happiness, which help keep them employed, which help keep them fed and their families happy. And over time, yes, there is a very strong core, especially in America, of very liberal, very pro promiscuity, pro LGBTQ kind of stuff. But over time, people will take what brings them safety over enforcing their will about 8 times out of 10. And if you as an organization or you as an individual can become that which provides them with it over top of that which they view as the ruling power, then you can become in and of yourself a power without even controlling the nation.
Yeah. Also, another question. I see Rise from the Ashes come up a lot. So, like, from what I take from that is, like, when a country's in ruins, or when there's been a war or something, whatever, like a fascist state can rise pretty easy, like what Hitler did. So do you think that it would be easier to rise from the ashes, or do you think it would be easier to start like a country inside a country, like you just said?
It's always easier to rise from the ashes.
It's always easier to rebuild. Although we don't use Hitler as an example. He's not held as a fascist, right? But
just an example.
It's an example of rising from the ashes. Absolutely, you can say the same thing about the Bolsheviks in 1917 to 1921, rising from a completely new slate. I understand what you mean. I was just saying that for the audience here, so that they understand our point. Absolutely, it is always going to be easier to build from nothing, right? But the downside of building from nothing is that a lot of people died to get. A lot of people had suffering and other horrific things happen to them in order for you to get to nothing. And while it's easier, and it's always going to be easier to construct a fascist state from the basis of nothing, it will never be good on the people that you're constructing it in. And first and foremost, we are humanitarian. We don't want to cause the unnecessary suffering of a nation. In fact, that's why we do to prevent it. So when we look at this and we see a nation that's been absolutely destroyed, it's more of pity than of selfish thought of constructing it.
It should be noted that, at least in every time I've read it, Rise from the Ashes has always been a somber note. It's never been victorious. Because even if, let's say, for example, somewhere in the world, a group of fascists start a violent revolution, and they succeed. what they will have then done is damage the nation, the people, the very thing they sought to make better. And yes, it will let them establish their program and, build and, hopefully in their eyes, build the country up to the glory they wish to see it become to. But what inevitably will have happened is that they will have hurt the thing that they claim to love just to make it fit into the view that they see it as. Well, I'm not necessarily saying that violent revolution is always a bad thing. There are cases where through either tyranny or through total degradation of any form of functional government that it is necessary. It should never be seen as anything other than the very last resort.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Because also I live in South Africa. It's a very black state, if you want to say that or whatever. So we used to have an apartheid system where obviously it was a nationalist system, but that fell apart. So I don't see a country like mine coming back to something like that. So I don't know if I should immigrate or what. I don't know either.
So what the issue with South Africa, and I've talked with quite a few breweries about this, especially about the issues of living in South Africa. I find that the current dichotomy that you're faced with is two sides overly inflated with racialism. You have the ANC, the African National Congress, who's too focused on their black supremacist rhetoric and their I don't like to say this, but their anti-white rhetoric. It's true, they are. They hate white people because of what happened during the apartheid. And then on the other side, your only seemingly quote-unquote moderate alternative for being a person who's not going to fit in is groups like the AWD or AWS or whatever the heck, skeleton guys and all of them. They seem like the quote-unquote moderate alternative for people that are suffering from the oppression of the. And while it's hard to confront that this is that this is going to be something that South Africa's going to have to go through. But I think it's going to be easier in the case of South Africa for people to pick up after the fight. Because right now, as the state stands, it's just not healthy.
One thing I should note as well is that if there is to be any, and I obviously I'm speaking in general terms here. If there's to be any change, people first have to stand up for it. And I understand that the situation in South Africa is rough. It is bad from everything that I've seen. It is not good at all.
They actually have a few subscribers and a couple members who are down there, and they've characterized it as the blossoming stages of a civil war.
And if you are to, as as you said, you'd heard, rise from the ashes, then you will need some form of foundation to rise from.
Yeah.
Because now I'm not necessarily stating go out, become a revolutionary, all this stuff. But if you still have, any amount of faith in South Africa, in your nation, then the best thing you can do to attempt to help it is to start. And who knows, perhaps maybe through the grace of God, you can save it from going straight down the hill. But in the worst case scenario, so long as you keep to it and you dedicate yourself and you work with those around the world who would be willing to assist, at the very least, you'll have some form of foundation to either to survive what is to come and to have the possibility of rising from the ashes.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
You love your country as much as everybody else here loves their country. And in the end, you don't want to see it go. And I think that's the similarity with a lot of people that are going to be facing. And as bad as it can be, I think everybody will have a detachment to country of their home. So it's going to be a rough few years for you. And we're sorry that we can't really.
A rough few years for everyone, honestly, but
for everyone. But it's going to be harder for the South Africans. We're really sorry we don't have solutions for you. It sucks, right? But keep your head up, man.
Yeah, honestly, the only solution, yeah, exactly. The only solution that is left to people in a situation like that is to become the solution.
Exactly. Find people who agree with you. Find other fascists, right? Find these networks and get together and try to work out how you can fix the country. That's all we can suggest.
I'll have to head out.
Just remember to keep it humanitarian, because even if it all goes down the worst way possible, you're still going to be kept around because you're benefiting your community. Nobody's going to kick out.
If you go out to support your community, they'll come out to support you.
Yeah, exactly. You're not going to get kicked out of your country. You're not going to get as much opposition when people are making a positive connection between you and your movement and your community, basically.
You don't even need
Thank
to.
you for
as
being
much,
here, Cammy. If you have to go, you can. Thank you for
Yeah,
being on with us.
thank you.
We'll set up the
and
next
as
meeting, and I'll DM you the details for that.
That'll be
as
great.
much as it
I'll hope to
is,
see you again.
as much as it is a title and a claim that we should hold up with pride, it does not have to be explicitly, fascistic. It could simply be a national party or a national organization or a national front that is just dedicated to the preservation of the nation and the betterment of its people. So long as the conception itself is fascistic, it doesn't need to go under the title.
Yeah.
You can find your own alternative. That's what we're telling you. Thank you so much for coming up. If you want to join the server, we can help you outsource and find other people that are in similar straits to you.
Oh, cool. Thank you, guys.
All right. See you, man.
Well, you're welcome.
All right.
Take
Who do
care.
we have up next? John and
Wait, you-
5208.
Evan.
Yes.
Come on up, buddy.
Let me guess. You South African?
Sorry, what?
You South African?
Yeah,
No,
he was
I'm not
South
talking.
African.
No.
Oh.
Pico. Yeah, him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was South African.
He said he was.
Wait, I'm sorry. I hear a lot of things. I was checking something, but he sounded Afrikaner to me, but I could be wrong.
Seems like John the boy is coming up right now, so we'll. Oh, here he is.
Yep.
Hello, John.
There you go.
How's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
All right. I just got a question about the state of media, if you guys don't mind.
Sure.
All right. Absolutely.
What should our views on media be in general?
Well, the issue with modern media is multifaceted. I'm assuming you're an Aussie, right?
Yep.
All right. So the issue with media, especially outside the United States, there's a lot of quote-unquote state-funded media. This isn't really the solution. I think that Mosley's talk on the free press is truly the most idealistic way and best way to look at the media situation around the world. That the country, the state, needs to hold the media to be true. And when it is not true, it needs to be held liable for whatever lie it's made, right? Whatever concoction is curated. And first and foremost, to achieve this, the media needs oversight. It needs to be held to a standard. So it needs to be regulated on what it can, produce. It's not going to be prevented from saying things. And I hope main critique or, critiqueful or whatever, critical, I guess, of the state and whatnot class. But in reality right now, a good discussion I had the other night about this was that the media is simply a tool for two different rich sides to batter each other with, right? And that's the disappointing part of it.
Media needs to. Now, I'm not sure if it ever was truly, based in truth, but it needs to be advanced towards, like Seamus was saying, it needs to be a truthful outlet for information to be spread. Now, obviously, there is a purpose and a time for propaganda. It's necessary I do believe it's necessary for the continued cohesion of a state.
Yeah, well, look at the United States during World War II. The media was used as a propaganda outlet willingly because they recognized that they had to subvert them or submit themselves for a better effort, for a higher goal.
But the media, whenever it's not necessary to influence the people for the betterment of the country, and by that I mean, look at a lot of these media outlets that utilize it for, the spread of, hey, support breast cancer awareness or support cancer children or stuff like that. That's a useful tool. But other than those particular circumstances, I honestly believe opinion needs to be taken out of media. If you're going to maintain a media that is not completely propaganda, then media must be upheld, like Seamus said, to the truth, as best as can be possibly done. And for that, there does need to be kind of a reintroduction of the fourth class, but not necessarily as it was, but a new interpretation of it, which would be to go out there, much like the media, find the information, and then utilize that information to hold the media to the truth.
Exactly. There needs to be watchmen for the media. That's the only question, John?
Yeah, that is. Thanks.
All right, thanks for coming up next. Right. Come on up, buddy. What brings you here today?
I just want to say hi first before anything. So, hello to all yous here. That's so to say. But I'm a neo-Nazi, as you can see from my picture, and I'm part of Adam Waffen Division, which is a Nazi group, right?
Yep, we know what Adam Waffen is.
And yeah, you know our thing that we see, we want a race war and all that shit, yeah. But when you tell community that, they cry because they're like, no, you need to be peaceful, no. But then they don't realize that the media is basically run by the government. It's like it's all government, really. The thing is that people don't see that they think that they're better than everyone, the rich and the fucking people like in Black Lives Matter and everything. They think that they're better. They think that because they're saying this that they're better. Like, what pisses me off is also the people that say that they're braver than soldiers, they're braver than this. That really pisses me off. Like to say.
Who is saying this stuff?
Oh,
I'm sorry, but who is saying this stuff? Like
this is
no one is better.
Yeah, I see it.
It's like
there's this LGBT.
Okay,
there's the part of the LGBT community, yeah, who think they're better than the men who fought in the wars, the men who died for a country. They're men who stood up against 500 soldiers and died fighting. They think that they're better.
Well,
because they say that they're gay.
I think this conceptualization is a bit. Yeah, go ahead, Em.
But I suppose my question is, what is the question you're bringing to us? Because obviously, you know, I'm in full agreement that is some specific infuriating bullshit. My father didn't break his spine over in the Middle East for some faggot to say that they're braver than my dad. I'm sorry, that didn't happen.
Fuck yeah.
Apologies.
This is my question.
Apologies.
This is my question.
But yeah, that's what I was getting into. Is while I can understand all that, what is the question you're bringing to us?
I'm bringing the way people like them LGBT, yeah. My question is, why do they think that they're braver? Why?
Well, we can't answer that. We're not them.
I don't think it matters what they think. They can think whatever they want. I don't care.
Yeah, I think that's their individual thought. Thanks for coming on here, Lightspeeder. Next up, we got.
Well,
that was a strange one.
Apologies for losing my temper.
Yeah.
No, Evan,
Jazz here put it acutely in DMs here. He's an angry lad who doesn't know how to express himself other than to go to Nazism. I guess we'll have. Let's see. Oh, we got new people coming in. Death Note and Drama Award. I guess we can invite Death Note on. Welcome on. What brings you here? What's your question?
I have a question. So, are you dreamsexual?
Are we what?
Wait, what?
Are you Tommy sexual?
No.
What?
All right. Yeah. All right. We'll have Arrows on.
These last two ones have been just lovely.
Come on, Arrows. Come on up, buddy.
What's an ass fuck? Now this.
What brings you on to ask a question here, Arrows?
So we all know that there would be like corporations, like the 22 corporations governed by syndicates. But like, you know, how would the government prevent conflicts arising out of unions?
Well, that's where the labor courts come into play. And if you could just mute the mic or put on push to talk there for a second. Get a little bit of static there.
Yeah, there's a lot of static there too.
But yeah, the way that the arguments between the labor authorities, be it employer or labor, would be conflicted is that they would be combated by a labor court in which they would have equal access to mediation to ensure that both of their sides are fairly brought to bear and discussed. So when a certain issue is brought up amongst the labor must be between worker and employer. This will be mediated by the state judicial system in order to ensure a fair and equitable outcome for the side to prevent strife.
It should be noted as well that as the state is both in charge but also acting as mediator, should a should an unequitable resolution to it not be possible, such that one side is specifically unhappy with it, it would be possible to go through a continuation of such courts, kind of like how oh gosh, what am I trying to say? How specific cases can go through the current court system in America all the way up to a Supreme Court, where once it's through there, it would set a precedent for all other cases going forward.
Exactly.
Inevitably, a ruling would have to be made, but it would try to be resolved as much as is possible to be solved before such a situation would occur.
Absolutely.
Basically, what we're trying to say in short is that it would be easier to go through a process than it would be to start a class war to get the end result.
Yeah. Is that your only question here?
So what happens if an agreement doesn't happen between two parties?
Well, then it would have to go up and up and up, right? The court system would have to rule on it, and if the ruling wasn't satisfactory to one of the other sides, they could appeal it to a higher judicial court within the labor construction, right?
And it should be noted that inevitably you will reach the quote-unquote highest court in the land, and once you reach that point, there must be a ruling, either one way or the other.
The ruling at that point, whatever the ruling is the ruling. There's no changing that. That is the law until at which a later date maybe it's relooked at due to progressing technology, some other event that changes these circumstances that caused it. But until that day is after that court ruling, that is the law. Sort of like how our current judicial system works.
And what should be noticed is that this is simply a system to ensure, as best as is possible, that people are satisfied with the ruling. There is no way to directly ensure that everyone will always be satisfied with the rulings that are made.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming up here. Go.
Sorry.
All right, who's next? Ben. Hello, Grug. What brings you up here today?
Sent.
So I'm just wondering, in this hypothetical American fascist corporate state, whatever you want to call it, obviously, I think we can all agree that hypothetically, in the first days of said, say, fascist party wins some major election, maybe get like a majority in the House or Congress or even the presidency. How obviously there's going to be a shit ton of violence and political instability, shit like that. Would said violence, what would be the states? So this is like fascist state. What would be the response to such violence? Like
what should be noted is that if, God willing, a fascist party in America,
or can we just do
if I may, if they obtain power through election, then that implies that there is at the very least enough support for, let's say, the highest office you suggested, which was presidency. There is then enough support in the land of America to promote the election of a fascistic president, whose platform would be a complete reformation of the entirety of the American system to suit the policy which he pursues for America. At that point, any violence that would occur would be coming from the minority. And while I cannot state for specific what any specific reaction would be, the goal would be to minimize damage while ensuring that peace was once again brought back.
Or can we just do something like I think, because I'm a member of the ARF, I think we had this discussion before, but we kind of have a mix between, like, Reformationism is obviously not a pacifist ideology, but first we must use legal and peaceful means before before we try
Self-defense
keeping
is the
out.
key. Self-defense is the key.
Self-defense is the key. If we're going by the American Reformation Front's standing in regards to how we deal with conflict, it is a policy of aggressive defense. Never be the first to attack, but if you are attacked, defend yourself to the equivalence by which you are attacked, and allow them to flee should they want to go.
Exactly. You never pursue violence in action. Thank you for coming up here.
He has a cat.
We'll
That's
circle
what
back
that
around you, Grug. We want to keep this mobile.
Yeah.
All right.
That's what that fuck off was, though. I guarantee it. His cat was messing with
Okay. He wasn't yelling fuck off at you, Evan. I don't know.
No.
Come on up here. We're Dolpho.
Ow.
Oh god, that pop up shit's so creepy.
Hey, stop.
So what's your question, Rudolph?
Yeah, so can you hear me right now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, so what do you guys think of that? Like the National Fascist Party in Italy? Like, do you think
Are we
it was
talking
like a good
1930s, 40s, or are we talking Casapao?
Like, yeah, the 1930s. Yeah.
Well, the organization, it was
opinion-
the OG, right? The whole point of it was that it was curating the movement that we hoped to vitalize and modernize the country.
Yeah, but I'm talking about like how like the people in it, because in my opinion, the National Fascist Party was pretty corrupt. Like they had literal anti-fascist in it. Yeah,
Of course,
it wasn't new.
The PNF was a body of which was supposed to end the need for party systems, right? The end goal was to remove the need for the petty party systems of liberal democracy, instead merge everything into a single party in which they could then act. That's why it is.
It's important also to realize that it merges. Obviously, there were communists and anti-fascists who were within it, or at the very least were within the parliament during that time. But the purpose was so that their critiques, their criticisms, and the entire manpower behind those parties could be used for the benefit of the state. Even if there were disagreements, they could be worked out within a vocal system, without those particular groups being sidelined and being forced to resort to violence to have their say within government, even if their say wasn't necessarily put into policy. At the very least, gave them the feeling and the opinion that they had a voice, that they had some capacity to influence things, which helped prevent rebellion and helped ensure that criticism, which could have inevitably boiled over into revolt, could be used to better the state and ensure the stability of the fascist system.
Yeah, that's fair, but like what actually happened is that like the party got so corrupt that it
got undermined. Yeah, I know that was the issue that they ran into because the monarchy continued to undermine.
Yeah, so they had
in my video that I did 3 months ago, ish fascism origin, first years of basics, I actually discussed the issues of the PNF and its front. So if you want to do research on it, there's a video out on that. We're gonna wrapping this up soon. It's been going on 3 hours now. Thank you for coming up.
But Seamus, this was supposed to go on for 5 hours.
I know, right? If there's any more questions down there,
I believe we have 2 more. Union Jack and Death Note.
Death Note's the one who asked if we were dream sexual.
Oh,
it's sexual.
Union Jack, turn on your mic there, buddy.
Union Jack, turn your microphone on. Before we send these.
You might be typing in general.
The Squatty show. Oh god.
It does not seem like Union Jack has a microphone. Is he typing?
No. Really type. No, he can't unmute. Hold on.
Oh.
I'll let you back up here. Back in here, Ian.
I'll let you back up. It'll be fine.
Hold on, you need to go to... Hold on. Yeah, there. Now I can unmute you. We're server muted, that's why. What?
Why would he be server muted? What'd you do, Seamus?
No, what he did.
This question is in relation to the conversation with Gollum previously. So, what constitutes speech that goes against the state?
Right, so if it's unproductive and it's just idle declamations, like somebody goes on the street and says, I hate the country,
and proceeds not to give reasoning or a whim to a reasoning, a kind of idea of why they dislike the state in its current form. It is just idle. It's unnecessary, useless. That nowhere. It's not productive.
It should be noted, though, that this specifically relates to speech which is incitement to violent or incitement to civil disobedience or even civil war.
Yeah, that was my
The-
question. Like
it would be
communists,
so. Go ahead.
like the
Mm-hmm.
communists who always say "death to the state," or like "death to the capitalist state," and the anarchists who are very vocal against the state. And it was like, does that constitute a speech?
Well, it would wholly depend upon the form in which it was done. For example, if a communist wished to partake in a social debate, and they maintained of themselves a very polite demeanor, and they held themselves to the same standards that the rest of the people they were held to, even if their talking points were, this is how the world should be, and it's vastly different from how the state is. At the very least, it's done with the intention of making the nation a better place. But if it's simply, to pull Seamus's example, screeching on the street about revolting against the state and overthrow those who would tyrannize you without any evidence or proof behind the action, then then it's being used. Then that speech can directly influence possible revolutionary or terrorist based attacks. Now, there does need to be, and obviously, if by some horrible chance it got to this level of corruption, there probably wouldn't be much you could do about it. But if the government was corrupt in such a degree that it was actively harming the people, then it would then be the duty of the people to speak up about it. Because if the people and the state are one and the same, and it's an organic body, then it is the duty of that body to recognize infection and try to excise it.
Okay, that was my only question.
All right.
We have 4 people.
We have a dual. I'm not sure how to pronounce that.
Hello.
Hello.
Speak Arabic.
Do we speak Arabic? No, I do not speak Arabic, unfortunately.
Iraq.
Yeah, I don't think any of us speak Arabic.
Nope.
No. If you want to try and attempt to translate your question, you can
Say,
put it in VC
say.
text.
Ashhadu.
Wait, what?
Ashhadu.
Yeah.
And la.
Sorry, I think that the language barrier is a bit too.
Hold on, we might have an Arabic speaker.
Oh.
Hold on, we have somebody who speaks Arabic.
What the hell?
Okay.
Go back to where you came from.
State.
Oh my god, what a fucking ass. Techno.
Jesus.
Techno speaks.
Nah.
Techno. Right, we had one guy because he was going to translate some of the Arabic works we had on Bath. So I know we have an Arabic guy somewhere. I know we have Arabic speakers. Come on up, Rodolfo. You speak Arabic, yeah?
Yeah, I do.
All right, Al here speaks Arabic, seemingly only. So, Al, you can phrase your question again? Or ask them to phrase their question again, Rodolfo.
So I didn't hear what their question was.
Yeah. Maybe you should ask them to repeat.
Ali, Ali.
All right. Al, we'll invite you back at a time in which we can find a fluent Arabic speaker. I know we have one somewhere, and we'll invite you back when we find one. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we have Meave and Kay who want to join. So we'll invite them up. On up. Hello, welcome.
What are your Hi? What are your thoughts on
God,
disabled people?
no. Get rid of them. Get rid of
No,
them. Get
what
rid
did I
of them. Get
do?
rid of them.
What are your
Get
thoughts on
rid of them.
disabled people?
Disabled people.
What are your thoughts? Yeah.
We have no issue with disabled people. People with disabilities aren't at fault for the fact that they're people. It's not their fault that
They're
they
actually
have some
so
kind of.
cutesy. They're so cutesy. I like to put like little leashes on them and drag them around.
Bruh, please go. Please go. Please go. Please go.
Kind of weird.
Okay, okay. Seamus, it has been great.
I
But
was
unless
right.
anybody else has a serious conversation, I need to go.
Yeah, I'm not thinking
Epic,
anybody else has serious points to make. I think that about wraps us up here.
I think that
Yeah,
I think
no
that
one's,
does about wrap us.
Golem
Yeah.
is asking to come back in. He had a serious question last time.
Yeah, I guess Golem, come on up, Golem.
This will be my last question because I will
Shalom,
have to go.
shalom, buddy. Welcome up.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Good to hear. When are you guys going to do like foreign policy wise with other nations and such? If we were to,
But that's actually going to be. We don't want to spoil anything. That's going to be a topic for one of our next meetings. Is the
okay.
conceptualization of foreign policy.
This is
So-
this hasn't.
Oh,
This
okay.
was not the whole establishment of the manifesto.
No, we just finished up social side. We haven't even broached on economics or anything like that. Really.
Oh, okay.
Oh, we've
Yes,
kind
I am
of
deeply
going
intrigued
We
in that
touched on
regard, and I think.
nationalization in a few folders. We didn't really flesh it out. We'll do that one of our next meetings.
Oh,
All right. Yes, I was very intrigued in the subject and wanted to know more. Good to know we're
Of
going
course,
to be doing
we're gonna
that
try to
in the
cover as
future.
much as possible in the next few meetings. The goal
All
is
right,
to
good
bring
to
the
hear.
groups that we had meeting here into closer collaboration.
Yes, good to hear.
Thank
Well,
you for coming up,
thanks.
Golem.
That answers all my questions.
All right, and I think that's about everything.
I do believe it is.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, this has been lovely. Aside from a few
Absolutely.
hiccups here and there.
A little bit of technical difficulty.
Aside from the technical difficulties. Seamus, do you remember New Frontier USA's website?
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
No, I was gonna say it because I was gonna give everybody the websites of those who
Oh,
participated.
newfrontier.org.
All right, so you can find
newfrontierusa.org.
You can find New Frontier USA at newfrontierusa.org. You can find the American Reformation Front at americanreformationfront.org. I do not believe the Alaskan National People's Party has a website. And you can find the Seamusite Fascisti at
SeamusiteFasciste.org.
.org. I didn't know if there was anything else.
Well, to
Alright,
be honest,
well, it has been
it's
a
such a-
gas.
It has been great. Thank you all for coming on. Thank you all for being here.
Stay tuned for next time.
Yeah.